ask the committee secretary to read the names of our VIPs that are here today, placed on record. But I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Secretary Carlos Dominguez. Sir, thank you very much. I know your time is valuable, and every moment outside of your office is, I'd say, moment lost for the country. But this measure, I think, will be one of the measures that will propel our region, I say our region because you're from Mindanao, just like myself, to greater heights if peace is achieved. And I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Dulay for also being with us today, sir. And it being the final hearing, it's icing in the cake, ika nga, in terms of our legislative work that members of the Internal Revenue and the Finance Department are here. We'd like to also take this opportunity to thank the members of the Bansemer Transition Commission who have diligently joined almost all of our hearings with very little funding whatsoever. Pinaparinig ko po yung DOF chief. Kasi kulang yung kanilang mga allowance pupunta dito sa program na ito. But again, you know, many of them are doing it because of their love and advocacy for the Bangsamoro region, and other guests that will be read by our committee secretary. Committee secretary, you're now recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Our resource persons for today from the Department of Finance, we have Secretary Carlos Dominguez III. We also have the Bureau of Internal Revenue Commissioner Cesar Dulay, and we have the former Mayor of Quezon City, Mayor Brigido Simon. From the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, we have the following commissioners: Commissioner Jose Lorena, Commissioner Maysara Latif, Commissioner Datu Mussolini Lidasan, Commissioner Jajuri, and Commissioner Amal Sulaiman. From the ARMM, Mr. Chair, we have a representative of the Regional Treasurer, Mr. Gani Petron. He's the Assistant Regional Treasurer. We also have the Chief Accountant, Ms. Brigida Fontanilla, and the Chief of the Cash Division, Ms. Rosalinda Hassan. We also have the Regional Secretary of the DENR, Mr. Haji Kahal Ketag, and the Port Administrator of the Polyok Freeport and Eco Zone, and the OIC Executive Director of the Regional Economic Zone Authority, or REZA, Mr. Eshan Carl Mabang. Together with him is Mr. Imad Kamid, Head of the Information Technology Division of the Regional Ports Management Authority. We also have the Director of the Finance and Budget Management Services, Attorney Mim Balawag Mangutara, Jr. From the Bureau of Local Government Finance, we have Executive Director Nino Raymond B. Alvina. And from the National Tax Research Center, we have Representatives Deputy Director Teresita Solomon and Mr. Mark Lester Aure. We also have the former spokesman for the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. and former Deputy Secretary General for the 1987 peace talks with the MNLF and CPLA under Ambassador Emmanuel Pelaez, Mr. Adolfo Paglinawan. And we have the Secretary General of the Federation of Royal Sultanate, Dr. Saidamin Lumondot. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Comsec Berna. I just have a short statement. Last week, we completed our public hearing on the provinces of the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. We went to the Basilan, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi provinces, and we even entered Zamboanga City, which the sentiments were strongly opposed to be included in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region on an opt-in mechanism. Although we considered it entering the lion's den, it was a very good discussion, and very, the exchange was very educational for both sides, but it was very cordial, and we thank the people of Zamboanga for still welcoming us with open arms. And that just goes to show that the democracy truly is at work here. And we heard many of those in support of the proposed measure, and I'd like to put on record, I'd say 99% of those that we met in Maguindanao, in Lanao Sur, Marawi, even Cotabato City, in the Basulta area, Basilan, Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, were completely in support of the proposed measure.
Since we are focused, ladies and gentlemen, in our timeline, we regret that we do not have enough time to further visit other provinces not inside the core territory of the Bangsamoro, as much as we want to, and listen to all the voices and get all the sides of their particular localities. But that said, 11 hearings, I think substantial. We heard the constitutionalist speak about the constitutional issues. We've had already a preliminary hearing on the financial aspect of the Bangsamoro basic law. Was well represented by the Undersecretary of Finance, Yusek Agabe. We had Yusek Agabin with us, and we also had, even in one of the hearings, we had Secretary Ben Jokno in the second hearing of the said measure. And actually, I had this hearing called because this was the request of Senator Ralph Recto. So we've had two hearings on the issue on fiscal autonomy. I believe Senator Ralph is on his way. Hopefully he'll be able to attend. But before we tackle the issues of fiscal autonomy and budgeting for the new Bangsamoro region, let me thank and extend the subcommittee's deep appreciation to those who helped provide assistance to make all our previous hearings, especially our out-of-town hearings, successful and meaningful. I'd just like to put this on record. Aside from the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, whose tireless efforts in all these hearings will bear fruit very soon, and hopefully, inshallah, our law will become a reality very soon. I would like to thank AFP Chief of Staff General Ray Guerrero for lending us the air, naval, and land assets and manpower of the AFP to make sure that we are able to move around, to mobility and security of the men and women of the armed forces. Most especially the West Mincom Commander, Lieutenant General Carlito Galvez, who was with us most of the time during all our hearings for the Bangsamoro Basic Law. As mentioned by the chairman of the BTC, the vice chair of the MILF, Chairman Ghazali Jafar, it was his first time to ride a C-130. Sabi niya, napakaganda pala ng C-130. At it was his first time also to ride the helicopters of the armed forces. Sabi niya, ang ganda-ganda din pala ng helicopter ng armed forces. Dati daw, yan ang ginagamit nila pagbakbakan at pagbomba daw sa kanila. Eh na yun, ginagamit daw nila na yun for peace and kapayapaan para sa region. It was very heartwarming to hear him say that. Of course, he said it in jest, but everybody welcomed this statement as the paradigm shift of what is happening now in the Philippines to a political solution. We have with us Brigadier General Jess Estueta. Of course, we'd like to thank him. He's our AFP Office Legislative Affairs head. And also General Ramiro of the Peace and Development Office of the AFP. Armed Governor Mujib Hataman for hosting us in Cotabato and in Basilan. The MILF Chairman Alhaj Murad Ibrahim and MILF Central Committee members for warmly receiving us in their camp in Camp Darapanan in Sultan Kudarat town of Maguindanao. That was quite an experience, and I think 4 senators visiting at that time, or 4 senators visiting at the time, was record of sorts for the MILF, for a number of senators visiting and giving respects to the officers and members of the MILF in pursuit of peace. We would like to also thank Mayor Gandamra of Marawi City also for hosting us in Marawi together with the MSU President Dr. Makaayong during our Marawi hearings. Of course, by Soraya Adjong and Vice Governor Bombit Adjong for hosting us as well in Lanao Sur. We'd like to thank also former Governor Sakur Tan of Sulu and Governor Toto Tan of Sulu for warmly welcoming us in the town of Holo, together with Bishop Lampon of Sulu, and the Notre Dame of Holo College President, Reverend Father Romeo Saniel, for hosting our hearings on the BBL in the beautiful campus. We'd like to also thank the Joint Task Force Sulu Commander, Brigadier General Cirilito Sobihana, for their support, as well as Governor Matba of Tawi-Tawi, We had several congressmen, women, Sahali, Congresswoman Sema, as well as MSU Tawi-Tawi Chancellor Dr. Mary Joyce Ginto Sali, Governor Jim Hataman of Basilan, Basilan State College President Dr. Nasser, and of course, our host in Zamboanga City, Mayor Beng Climaco, as well as their councilmen and women, the Vice Mayor, and the congressmen of Zamboanga City who made our hearing there very interesting and lively. We have Congressman Celso Lobregat and Congressman Manix Dalipe. And all those, no, I apologize if I miss out on some names. I think we have, we still have, sorry. Zamboanga City Polytechnic College President Nestor Cabral for hosting our hearings in Zamboanga City. Police Chief Superintendent Gerardo Rosales, Police Chief Superintendent Daniel Makatlang, Deputy Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, by Sandra Sem of Cotabato City. Of course, Congressman Cali Di Maporo, who has also valid concerns, being that some of his towns in his district are part of the core territory of the BBL. We thank him for attending. Members of the media who tirelessly joined us in covering our hearings, riding in the C-130, 2.5 hours of, and the naval vessel that they rode, enduring the heat of the sun and the coldness of the air in these flights and the trips. Also, the Senate Secretariat, nako, ito talaga, bilib ako, lalo na sa members of the OSAA who are with us, the stenographers who are with us, the pages that were with us, maraming salamat to them, to all of them. Of course, the senators who were with us that trip, record-breaking of sorts, Secretary. We had in Zamboanga City 7 senators, a third of the Senate was there to hear in our last hearing day, out-of-town hearing day. We had Senator Villar, Senate President Coco Pimentel, the seatmates, Senator Sherwin, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, Senator Sani Angara, Senator J.V. Ejercito. We had with us also Senator Risa Ontiveros and Senator Bam Aquino, who showed bipartisan support for the said measure. I would like to take, and I'd like to take this opportunity to also recognize with us today no less than the Minority Floor Leader, former Senate President, former Secretary of the Department of Justice, former Executive Secretary, maraming former, but I'd like to say the distinguished gentleman of the Senate, Senator Frank Drilon, who is here with us today, as well as Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, my compadre, for being with us today. So, my apologies. I mentioned SB Coco at the beginning. My apologies if I failed to mention the others who gave their support, but all those who did take comfort knowing that in the passage of the BBL law, hopefully the guns will fall silent. Hopefully peace will reign all throughout Mindanao and all throughout the country, and violent extremism will finally be put to an end. I'd like to also thank the BTC commissioners, as I mentioned earlier, Secretary Jess Dureza and Yusek Nabil Tan of the OPAP, and all the officers of the OPAP, as well as PLLO, Yusek Gallardo, maling grupo pala yun, Yusek Gallardo and members of the PLLO. So, to continue with the hearing, I'd like to give an opportunity first. I've asked several questions in all the 11 or the 10 hearings. I'd like to give this opportunity to my Minority Floor Leader, to our Minority Floor Leader, maybe to start the ball rolling rather, Honorable Minority Leader. The question I'd like to ask Secretary Dominguez is on the fiscal autonomy that is being requested by the members of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. We will be giving them a block grant of a 6% of internal revenue, net internal revenue, and you're looking roughly, in our last hearing, it was roughly around 72 billion for next year, plus an additional development fund of 10 billion as well. I mentioned in many interviews, Secretary, that we will try to put safeguards in the spending of these said funds. You know, it's historically in these areas we've known that IRA can be loosely identified as personal income of the public servants there, and so we would like to make sure that these funds will be properly spent. And I'm so happy that no less than Secretary Dominguez is here, Commissioner Dulay, members of the Department of Finance. Maybe they can give us inputs on how we can assure that the funds given to the Bangsamoro basic areas will be protected and used wisely. We've mentioned several safeguards, the adoption of pre-audit and post-audit mechanisms for the Bangsamoro Commission on Audit, as well as the creation of the Deputy Ombudsman for the Bangsamoro region. We will request the Ombudsman this office so they don't have to fly to Davao to lodge their complaints. It can be just in the regional office of the Bangsamoro. And several other safeguards that we'd like to implement. But I'd like to start the ball rolling by asking the Secretary on his thoughts on fiscal autonomy and other provisions of the Bangsamoro Basic Law that will grant more funds for our region. Secretary, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. Senator Juan Manuel Zubiri, Chairman of the Subcommittee on the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Honorable Minority Floor Leader Drilon, Senator Win Gatchalian, Commissioner Dulay, honorable members of the Bangsamoro Transition Team, fellow workers in government. Let me begin by expressing full support for the formation of a Bangsamoro Autonomous Region through the enactment of a basic law. This will enable the achievement of a more substantial autonomy arrangement that meets the expectation of the Islamic community in Mindanao. In turn, this will be a major step towards achieving sustainable prosperity for all communities in Mindanao. Having said that, the Department of Finance underscores the fact that the stable economic fundamentals and strong growth momentum we enjoy today has been due to 3 decades of fiscal discipline. The national government, often at great political cost to itself, saw through the difficult structural adjustment programs to work down what was once a crushing debt load. Today, our people are ready to reap the rewards of long years of sustained fiscal discipline. Our credit ratings are at their best, and our financial system is sound. We expect increased investment inflows drawn by the expectation that the national government will continue with its sterling record of fiscal management. While the Department of Finance has a number of comments on a number of sections of the bill covering the funding of the proposed transitional government, we wish to emphasize 2 main points for today's discussion. First, any funding scheme should be programmatic, transparent, performance-based, and phased. The implementation of plans and programs must be clear and reliable to ensure effective utilization of the funds. These are the criteria of modern governance. Ensuring them will help in winning broader public support for the proposed autonomous arrangement. Second, the fundamental requirements for sustained growth, such as hard infrastructure, investment in human capital, new communications technologies, and efficient administration systems, apply to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region as much as it does to the rest of the country. Fiscal autonomy is earned. It should be attained with the end goal of economic self-sufficiency and sustainable development. The provisions of the proposed law must ensure that in order to win public support. We are confident that all the efforts, patience, sacrifice, and hard work put in by this industrious committee will bear fruit with the passage of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Rest assured that the Department of Finance is committed to continue working closely with this committee. Thank you and good day.
Senator Drilon.
Can I just repeat, Secretary Dominguez, for emphasis? Your message is fiscal discipline is key. That's what I gather from your opening statement. And any funding scheme must be transparent and must hew to this basic principle of fiscal discipline. Now, can we have your specific comment or specific suggestions in order to make sure that, at least by provision of the law, fiscal discipline is enhanced, enforced, made sure it's followed, and not left to chance?
Yes.
Is there any particular provision which you wish to be included as a principle in the Bangsamoro Basic Law?
I do not have that specific item today, Mr. Senator, but you know, we have had a long experiment with autonomy, especially when the local government laws was passed. I, for one, if you remember, I was Secretary of Agriculture at that time, and together with Secretary Alran Bengson, we're very opposed to the devolution of the two functions, which is health and agriculture. Well, we lost that debate. But I think before we go into this law seriously, we should take a look at actually what happened with that law, because that is a good example that we can learn lessons for today. As far as I know, the health and agriculture sectors, as devolved, or the functions as devolved, hardly improve the health status in the different regions or different provinces, hardly improve the agricultural production. So let's learn lessons from what we did in the past. So let's not make big mistakes again towards that. I believed at that time it was important that not that so much it would be controlled by the central government, but there should be a national program for health and a national program for agriculture that should have been implemented and strictly monitored by the national government for implementation by the locals. But that did not happen. And if you look at the experience, we are no better off having done that devolution, and probably are worse off. Because right now, just take the case of health. The pressure on the national budget for health systems is tremendous. This function should have been devolved, or was already devolved, to the local governments, and yet they have not stepped up to the plate. The same thing with the agriculture program. So let's take a look at those lessons that we learned in relation to this Bangsamoro Basic Law. We want this Bangsamoro Basic Law to succeed for the people who will be covered in this area. But let us learn from lessons in the past and make sure those lessons are applied so it is successful for the Bangsamoro law. I've seen here provisions that they can issue bonds and they can collect their taxes and everything. But you know, nobody will lend you money if there's no fiscal discipline. So that is the most important, as the minority floor leader said. How can we assure that modern fiscal discipline practices are are practiced under this law. So how can the national government be of assistance? So one way is to build confidence on both sides. One is to make sure that the grants are given in blocks, so that and for specific programs. So it should be programmatic.
Yeah, all right. Let
Yes,
me
sir.
just,
Yes, sir.
you said the block grants should be for specific programs, and I hear you relay the experience that we had in the devolution on health, devolution on agriculture. Are you suggesting that the block grants should be accompanied, or that in the grant of the block grants, a national program should be outlined in the BBL where the block grants can be used and the guidelines?
Yes, sir. I think that's very important for the BBL and for the national government. You know, the success of this will depend on the public's acceptance of the law. And the public has to see that fiscal discipline is being practiced in all areas, specifically now in this particular area. So the way to build that is to say, okay, we have a national health program, for instance. So the grant, the amount that's estimated or requested by the Bansemer law is, say, 100 million pesos. Fine, we'll give it to you. We know the exact program, and we monitor the implementation, and we monitor the effects, so that we can publicize it and tell the rest of the country, yes, it's working very well. So that's programmatic. Of course, it must be transparent, okay? It must be open to audit, not only local and maybe national audit systems. It must be performance-based. We have to see the effect, not only the fact that you built the hospital, but did the health actually improve? And it must be phased, so that it can be provided in phases. And as the Bangsamoro authority authority will develop their own expertise, then more block grants can be given in the future. So, you know, a lot of problems are what happened in agriculture, for instance. And it was not to the Bangsamoro, it was to the whole country. There is no expertise locally. You know, you had, let's say, you had a rat problem in let's say Pampanga. They did not have the national expertise on pest control. So we have to make sure that the local expertise is there and developed from the indigenous peoples there. So as they develop that, as they develop the expertise, as they develop the ability to coordinate these programs, then the block grants can increase and maybe the supervision can be less. But here we have to hold people's hand and to make sure that it is successful. This is not to limit their independence, but to make sure that it's successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, Secretary Dominguez, obviously we cannot have a national program for every economic activity. Certainly we cannot do that, because then that could also run counter to the basic concept of autonomy. What I'm interested from you as a finance secretary, Mr. Secretary, is would you give the committee an idea of which economic activities should there be basic programs or national programs that we should outline in the block grant? As I said, not every economic activity, that's impractical, but which are the key national programs which, in your view, should be indicated in order to make provide a basis for a successful fiscal autonomy and fiscal program in that part of the country? Can you just, you know?
Yes. Number one, I would think, is the national program for infrastructure development.
All right.
We must make sure, for instance, that the, let's say, the railway system for Mindanao, okay, is tied into a national or a Mindanao-wide transportation plan. So you don't have the station in one place and the bus stations in another, you know. So you don't have the train stations in one place. So you have, that's one. So you want to make sure, for instance, that the production areas are connected very well through roads, through air, through rail, and seaports there. So that it should be part of a
Synergy.
yes, a synergy. It should be part of a network that interconnects. You know, a simple example is, if we, let's say, put rails there and we have rails that are standard gauge, the railway in the connecting Bangsamoro area should not be narrow gauge. You know, they have to meet, or you can't move one train from one place to the other. Yeah.
So in other words, okay, you're saying the infra program, there should be a program that will fit with the overall program in the other areas.
Correct.
Any other area that you would want to emphasize?
Yes, in investment in incentives, for instance, investment incentives. Right now, we already have 14 investment incentives giving agencies who are not coordinated, by the way. Not coordinated
Yeah, that's
at
why
all.
you want to rationalize the fiscal
Yes,
incentive, which
yes.
has been a frustration
Yes.
of the national government for the last 25 years.
Yes. So we have to make sure also that the investment incentives in the Bangsamoro area are
In sync.
in sync with the rest of the investment incentives. That they are not, giving incentives in areas that we think are not sunrise industries. So that is the second one. The third one, of course, and Commissioner Dulay is here, is on taxation policy. Taxation policy. How are we going to tax? I don't mind local taxes, but the national taxes have to be in sync also with the local autonomy.
Any other area, Any other area, Mr. Secretary, because I want to take a little bit more time on the taxation issue.
Yes. On health programs, it should be together. Tourism is very important, and that ties in with the transportation network. So those are some of the items that I can think about.
Yeah, okay. Well, at least you have given us 5 areas where coordination and guidelines can be included, at least for the block grants. And I don't know for how long a period of time, but you're saying that in these 5 areas, maybe we can consider making sure that there is symmetry between the programs in the Bangsamoro and the national government. But you touched on taxation. Mr. Secretary, we all know that the key to the success of a federal system, and here this is akin to that, is the ability of the federal states, in this case the Bangsamoro, to be able to independently manage their economic affairs. Now, one of the basic problems here is that the uneven distribution of, I withdraw that, is the uneven economic development, not only between the present ARMM and the rest of the country, but within the ARMM itself. Now, given this, how would you structure the relationship between the national government, the central government, and the regional government?
I would take a cue from the way it's done in the U.S. The U.S. has federal taxes, has state taxes. Okay, for instance, if the Bangsamoro area needs funds, maybe they can put a sales tax. Okay, that will apply for sales of VAT for that area only. Okay, but maybe they can have their own laws regarding real estate taxes. Maybe they can have their specific law regarding business licenses. That's fine, but there should be a clear definition, clear differentiation between what is federal tax and what is local tax. I'll give you an example. A state like Oregon in the U.S. has no sales tax. None. No sales tax. Okay. But they have a very high real estate tax. They have also a high state income tax. A state like Washington, which is across the river, has a sales tax, but it has no personal state income tax. And it has very low real estate taxes. So I can see that. We can handle that. But it's also very clear that everybody there has to pay a federal income tax. A federal tax. And then business taxes are also different. That is also fine. But I think you should take an example with that.
Have you examined, Mr. Secretary, together with Mr. Dulay here, the present proposals in the Bangsamoro Basic Law proposal insofar as the taxing powers are crafted and distinguished? And would you comment on those provisions? Are you prepared to do that? Or
just
general,
offhand, no? In general, I would like to make sure that the differentiation between national taxes and local taxes are very, very clear, so that there is no confusion here. I think the law is not very clear on that. I think there is some gray areas that will cause confusion among the public and potential conflict with the. But we can specify the.
We would appreciate if you
Yes.
can submit that to the
Yes,
committee,
we will.
because to me, Mr. Chairman, that is very critical. As I, Mr. Chairman, a few years back, I had the opportunity to, as I told you before, I had the opportunity to sit down with the Chief Justice of Spain, where autonomy is a it's an issue. And of all the things we discussed, he said, I do not know your situation in your country, but in my country, I know what went wrong because of our desire to accommodate everybody. The autonomy laws are not clear. And 50 years after, or 75 years after, or 100 years after, we are still debating what a particular provision means because it is the result of compromises. And therefore, they shut out Chief Justice before because of the interpretation of the law. And the message that he left is, whatever you decide, it's for your, you decide your own fate. There's only one thing that I would like to advise you. Make it clear. Make it very clear so that there is no confusion as to what the intention is. And that is consistent with what the Secretary is telling us. That is why I would like to avail of the expertise of the Department of Finance to advise us in the committee how to make it clear so that there is no confusion on the taxing powers between the Bangsamoro government and the national government, which is very critical in the harmony, in the existence, in the relationship between the central government and the local government and the Bangsamoro government.
May I make an additional suggestion? This autonomy, this basic Moro basic law is something that will evolve, and nobody can think of all the possible eventualities that will happen. So I think the law should be open also for an evolution as we find the the mistakes that were made, that the good things that should be emphasized. And in fact, I think this Bansemer Basic Law is a very good start for the federal law. Subscribe 100% to what Adolf Aspuna said. You know, let us try it first. Let's try this federal system first in the areas that are already red, that are already cut out for it, rather than do it nationally. And let's see what mistakes are made before we do it on a national scale. Anyway, there is no hurry. What is important is that we develop, not that we split up. I think that is the important thing. So, taking your time and being open to changes as the system evolves, I think is much better than having a rigid system with a lot of gray areas. Then you will have more conflict, waste a lot of time trying to clarify things rather than moving ahead. What we have to do for the arm area is precisely to bring the economic activity to a higher level, because right now their gross national income per capita is very, very low. The lowest. I think it is less than, I don't remember the number, but I think it is less than 10% of what it is for the national capital region.
But anyway, so just a final point. Can we therefore request the Department of Finance to go over the fiscal provisions, the taxing powers, etc., and give us specific comments on specific provisions and what suggestions you can give to us in order to improve the law and also to achieve the purpose for which we are crafting this? Is that,
yes, sir.
with the permission of the chairman, is that if that's in order?
Chairman, yes.
Absolutely, we'd like to request that, Secretary Sani, we really need specific provisions and amendments that you would like to suggest so that we can, as Senator Drilon said, our minority floor leader, not come up with provisions that are vague and will cause confusion, and yes, it could be, of course, unless provided for by the Bangsamoro Parliament, because there are provisions, as you said, it can evolve, just like our Congress and the Senate. So we can put provisions for us further provided by the Bangsamoro Parliament. But if it's all right with my two colleagues, can I request Commissioner Lorena, or whoever is the tax expert of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, to give the highlights of your fiscal and financial autonomy? Why the good secretary is here, and the Bureau of Internal Revenue Head, Commissioner Dulay, as well as us members of the Senate. I will be defending this on the floor and be helped by my colleagues. But of course, I would like to know on this aspect, what are the key highlights of the fiscal autonomy and the taxation that Secretary Sani Dominguez is requesting, specific taxation which is still left to national government, and the taxation reserved for the Bangsamoro autonomous region. Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we go into the specific of the provision, I'd like to thank our good secretary for a very enlightening elucidation of what should be done with the Bangsamoro. First, we are with him in looking at fiscal discipline as a ingredient for better governance in the autonomous region. That is why, in our attempt to come out with that fiscal discipline, we have mirrored the experience of the autonomy provisions of both Republic Act 6950 or Republic Act 6734, and at the same time the provision of Republic Act 1954 with relevance to the devolution of the local government code under 7160. The disconnect and the non-definitive lines between the taxing power of local government and the Bangsamoro. That is why in this provision, we also look at the consistency of the programs and policies of the national government vis-a-vis the autonomous region. That is why in the provision of the Bangsamoro Basic Law, which we agree would be evolutionary, we have provided very clearly for an intergovernmental mechanism to put symmetry between the programs of the national government and the regional government. these intergovernmental relations will provide us the opportunity to reconcile not only the program of the region with its local government, but the program of the region to the national government. We have also provided a full disclosure policy, both per budget and expenditure of the armed funds or the Bangsamoro funds to assure that there is transparency. That is one, and we agree precisely with our good secretary that that should be an ingredient. After all, our objective, both the national and the regional, is to put meaning into the autonomy. In order that we will be able to address the grievances on the ground, by providing them the necessary basic services that is necessary, without necessarily sacrificing the accountability of the funds that is being released to by the national government to the regional government. So we thank the good secretary for that, and we appreciate the input, and we agree fully with that. For the specific of the details of the provision in the Bangsamoro Basic Law, which addresses both fiscal policy and fiscal autonomy, I'd like to ask our Committee of Finance Chair in the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, Attorney Raisa Jajuri, to elucidate further on the details of the provision as provided for in the draft Bangsamoro Basic Law.
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, Commissioner Jajuri, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning po. As provided po in the our draft, there's an enumeration of the sources of revenue, which would help the Bangsamoro have more fiscal autonomy. So we have in the article on fiscal autonomy a section enumerating these sources, such as taxes, fees and charges, the annual block grant coming from central government, and then there will also be revenues from the exploration, development, and utilization of natural resources, as well as share in central government taxes, fees, and charges. There will also be revenues from the Bangsamoro government-owned and controlled corporations and financial institutions, as well as grants from economic agreements entered into by the Bangsamoro government and conventions to which the central government is a party. And then there will be grants and donations, as well as loans and funds coming from overseas development assistance. We also say in the draft that all powers already granted to the ARMM as part of its revenue generating powers will be transferred to the Bangsamoro.
Commissioner, could we be more specific in the crafting of the committee report? We will be having technical working groups next week. We're inviting the DOF to join us to be part of the technical working group. Secretary Sani, I need your best and brightest to help us in this together with the Commissioner Dulay. Because we really have to make it clear. Of course, there are provisions, and I've read through the provisions as mentioned by Commissioner Jajuri. We have to be specific what is national, what is regional. Yung VAT ba, dapat yan national? You know, it has to be maybe what is already listed in the national code, the tax internal revenue code. We can be very clear about that. I have for example, going back to the national program, I have a basic fundamental question. Yung PhilHealth ba po, Secretary? Yung PhilHealth, which is, I know, a big amount of funds being taken out from the national budget on our health programs. In the ARM, right now, as we speak today, under the old system, PhilHealth is paid for by national government? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The funding of PhilHealth, of course, comes primarily from the taxes on cigarettes and alcohol. And I think the amount provided to them is very significant.
So my next question would be, under the setup of the Bangsamoro Basic Law, will this national funding program cease to exist or be devolved to the Bangsamoro region with the block grant? We want to be clarified because I don't want to lose their PhilHealth benefits, no, by mere mention that they have a block grant. All of a sudden, national government will say, no more. You will not get any subsidies from us anymore. Will it continue, Secretary?
Well, I believe that it should. But again, this is an area that has to be very specific specifically defined. Will they continue or will they have their own PhilHealth? I don't know. I don't know. It's not clear to me in the provisions of the law. So again, you have to be very specific of what the block grant covers. That's why I think it's really very important that it be programmatic, so we know exactly what we are funding and what we are not funding, so that there's no complaint in the future na in-exclude kami dito, ganon, ganon.
I agree with you, Secretary, and that's another point that I'd like to take up with you and the technical working group later on. We have to put provisions wherein national programs should remain, kasi very vague yung inter-government mechanism. Yung inter-government mechanism, kung ayaw kayo kausapin ng national government, di wala ng national program. I think we should be very specific, like national programs should still continue or be allowed to be permitted in the Bangsamoro region, because another question, for example, on the DPWH, national highways, will that mean once we approve the Bangsamoro Basic Law, tigil na po yung budget coming from DPWH national office, and it has been a problem in this arm now. And you know that, Secretary, I always pitch in for arm. I'm always the one who brings this up during budget hearings. Certain bridges of national highways could not be funded because under the arm law, there was autonomy, and therefore it should be designated to the armed government. Of course, obviously, with the lack of funds of the armed government, they were not able to fix these bridges. My point is, we should be very clear in the provisions of the Bangsamoro Basic Law that national government can enter their national programs can enter into the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Is that before I recognize Commissioner Joe Lorena, I'd like to get that comment from Secretary Sani.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, let me just relate to you an issue, not with the Bangsamoro, but with the Aklan province. Okay, there is a bridge that the Vice Governor of Aklan wants to have the DPWH construct, but actually that is supposed to be under the local government, and that is part of the devolved powers. So while we would like to help, that's really under the local government. So we're trying to find out a way to do that. But so, can you imagine if we have this in several provinces in the Bangsamoro area? So it has to be very clear as to who will do what, who is going to provide what. And again, we are very willing to, I'm sure that the budget department and us are very willing to assist the Bangsamoro department on planning your revenues, planning your budget, planning your expense, so that you will come up with a solid fiscal program. So this is something that the national government should provide assistance, and this will only come in time. You cannot develop the expertise locally overnight, and I think that's precisely why I'm saying the fiscal autonomy in the transition should be very carefully phased. And to be honest with you, there will be provinces under the Bangsamoro area that will be advanced. There will be provinces that will not move ahead quickly. As in any group, you have the Pareto's law, about 20% of the group of any universe accounts for 80% of the revenues, or 20% of the group accounts for 80% of the problems. So you will have that, and everybody has to be supportive of this effort.
Thank you, Secretary. Now I'd like to recognize Commissioner Joe Lorena. I'd like to ask you, Commissioner, that same question. When we receive or when we grant you the block grant, ito bang national government sa iyong pananaw, no? What is those who crafted the measure? Does that already replace all the national government projects, or no? We have the block grant for the development, and yet we continue with the national programs such as PhilHealth, etc., etc.
Yes, there is a provision in the bill which says particularly with respect to road spurs. With respect to national roads, the national government shall continue not only to provide funds but even in the construction of that roads. What we're speaking of the power to construct here are regional roads, because we also, at present, there is local, regional, and national roads. So there is a provision in this BBL that the central government will continue to finance national roads, even the maintenance of existing national roads. That's for one. Second, there is also collaboration with respect to health between the national and central government. It is provided here that while it is an exclusive responsibility of the Bangsamoro to address the health situation in the region, there is provided that the central government and the Bangsa government shall cooperate with and assist each other in the prevention and control of diseases in the area. So there is a specific provision. Thirdly, with respect to social security, it is provided that the pensions, protection, that the members of this agency will continue, giving only the Bangsamoro the opportunity to add if it is not sufficient. I think that's the context. Yes, the
SSS
GSS
will continue.
Will help. They will continue to be part and member of this agency, but reserving the right of the Bangsamoro to put in additional premium if the same is still sufficient, because of the principle that I think we know the situation on the ground rather than the corporations which are very far from us. And secondly, it is more to enhance the delivery of services rather than to remove it outrightly. So this is provided for in this draft bill. But I agree with the good secretary that perhaps we can make it more clear, so specific, because you know the BBL is different from the current 1954 where the power were plenary. In the current autonomous region, the region is given plenary power to pass laws, even to organize local government units, and only limiting their power by the provision of the 10 negative lists. It's a reserved to the national government. Even further stating that despite that list, the regional government can, in the interest of the welfare of the people of the area, pass legislation. But this is different here. We are more defined what is reserved for national government, what is exclusive for the regional government, what should be cooperated upon by the national government and the regional government under a concurrence power, so that we will be able to assure that despite the autonomy, there will be consistent cooperation between the national government and the regional government to see to it that there would be there would be an effective delivery of the services to the people in the constituency of the Bangsamoro.
Commissioner Joe, one of the issues when I was in Zamboanga City, I spent another night there, uwi na ako nung Saturday, but one of the concerns, and this is area of taxation as well, pinuntahan po ako ng fishing industry. Kinausap po kami ni Senator, we stayed another night with Senator Gatchalian, and the sardines and tuna industry went to see us because of course the waters that was being considered as the Bangsamoro waters are their traditional fishing grounds. Natatakot sila because right now under the setup, ang dami nang humingi ng taxation sa kanila from the municipal to the provincial to the regional, and they're worried that will be under the Bangsamoro, they might not be able to enter these traditional fishing grounds, which will be to the detriment of the fishing industry, which employs, in General Santos and Zamboanga City, employs tens of thousands of people. So malaking industry ito, and it's a big money earner for the government and the country as well, national government. So I assured them during our meetings, and we assured them with Senator Sherwin, that we will be specific in terms, we'll try to be as specific as possible, because for them it's now a blind spot. It's a uncertainty. It's uncertain future for them. Yeah, and they're quite scared about it. And as I said, no, we'd like to craft, although I am sympathetic, Secretary, to them, because in Bukidnon, every square inch of our land is planted to pineapples and bananas, from Unifruti, Sumifro, Dabco, Del Monte, and Dole. And yet, the government, local government only receives a pittance, which is the RPT and the mayor's permit, yung business permit, which really is nothing. Makati, kino-collect ni Commissioner Dulay lahat dito sa Makati on the billions of pesos. Yung mayaman, si Nancy Binay and her sister in the city of Makati. Kami nun sa Bukidnon and many parts of Mindanao, Davao included, don't get that type of taxation that should be allotted to them, unfortunately. So, that's why I'm a federalist, to be honest. But I want to give BBL a chance. So I understand the claims of the Bangsamoro people that these are the traditional fishing grounds. As a matter of fact, many of those we consulted during our public hearings were saying, nauubos na yung isda nila, yung kanilang local farmers, hindi na rin makakapangisda doon dahil mga malalaking kumpanya, big companies, go there and harvest their fish. But with that said, can we put specific provisions to allay the fears of this industry for that particular section on the waters of the Bangsamoro region? So things like that. These are what Secretary Sanis had said. We have to be very specific so that we do not promote uncertainty but clarity in the how would you say continuity as well of governance and of economic growth. Secjo?
First, we recognize the concern of the sardine industry, in the canning industry. But at the same time, we also have to recognize the need of the sustenance fishermen, which is provided for in the Constitution that we should protect. For one, this is true in the island provinces of Sulu, Tawi-Tawi, and Basilan, because where this is the Sibuto Strait, the Pangutaran Strait, where the fishes are too abundant. And we have provided for a demarcation, which is the 15 kilometers principal waters, reserved officially for sustenance fishermen. Unfortunately, because of the sophistication of the gadgets now, of the commercial fishing, we have denied the sustenance fishermen of their fishing ground, resulting into the process into the death of many industries in the area. For one, the ordinary fishermen do not anymore fish in the island provinces. They do not even go to pair diving process because it is this has been destroyed already. But so what is provided for the BL is a balance between the two. Well, we admit that the big-time fishing industry can come, but there should also be a protection for the sustenance fishermen, because this is what we call business with social responsibility. Under Republic Act 1954, we have provided that. In fact, the fishery code, the arm came out in the fishery code, but they cannot implement it because there is no territorial imaginary line where that law could be implemented. These are the issues that the Bangsamoro Transition Commission had to grapple with. How to balance the interests of the manufacturing company and the sustenance fishermen. I'd like to note that even though I think Secretary Sani knows this perhaps, before, if you travel to Zamboanga, you cannot see the lights all throughout from Zamboanga City to Holo because of the commercial fishing, and there is an abundance. Before, the traditional practice is commercial fishing from as far as General Santos will have to relate with the local fishing. But now, no. I tried once to have a fishing boat myself to deliver fish to the market. I cannot now buy from ordinary fishermen because I have to relate with the commercial fishing boats because all the fishes are taken already by porciners, by commercial base. So what we are providing here is a balance between the commercial fishing boats and the sustenance fishermen. That is why we provided the popper. Because if you look into the technology of modern porciners now, if you park your vessel within the 59-kilometer radius from the shoreline, you will be able to draw all the fishes from the municipal waters. So perhaps while I agree fully that we have to come out with a very clear provision that would really protect not only the industry, but also protect the sustenance fishermen, so that there would be a balance. You know, this is a problem-solving process as far as we are concerned. We have had dialogue with the fisherman industry. Some of them do not have any more jobs, so they resort to other sources of activity, perhaps legal or illegal. So that's our problem. So I think in the crafting of this BBL, we have put into consideration not only the provision of the Constitution, as we are mandated by the President to reconcile, in order to protect also, because in the Constitution said sustenance fishermen should also be protected, but we are also minded of the requirements needed by our commercial manufacturing industry like the sardine industry. So we fully agree that with respect to the Bansemer, the buffer of 7.7 in the Sulu Sea, because it's a wide area, is to give protection to the sustenance fishermen. But they are allowed to navigate within that perimeter, so that even if they will park their vessel from the 22.2, at least there would be a reserve area, because the length of the light now that can draw pieces could reach to the very shore area. So if you do not protect at least a 7.7 area, you will kill the sustenance industry, and you kill the boat making industry in this part of the region. So thank you. That's the consideration that in the preparation of this law.
Chairman, just a very quick rejoinder. Commissioner, when we were there, itong mga fishing industry or the fishing operators were really quite worried about this new proposal. If I understand it correct, currently we have 15 kilometers from the shore, and we will now increase it to 22 kilometers. So basically, we're adding 7 kilometers from the present setup right now. They particularly waited for us, during after the hearing, they waited for us to talk to us. So, ang feeling ko, they're really under threat, and nakita ko na they're really worried that livelihood and jobs will be lost if we increase it by 7 kilometers. And from what I understand, that 7 kilometers is a very critical area, because that's where the most fertile, or that's where the most abundant area for fishing. Ngayon, ang argument nila is, if we push it back to 22 kilometers, basically we're killing the industry already. Killing meaning adding it more cost, because they have to now deal with the local government. And second, at 22, from my understanding, I'm not into the fishing business, but from my understanding, at 22 kilometers, wala na silang mahuhuli. So we're trying to merge the interests of both. But we're also quite worried, because the representation to us is the sardines industry in Jensan employs about 40,000 people, and we don't want to lose jobs in the process of putting this together. So, but how do you now balance these two interests, Commissioner?
First, we have to, while we want to generate revenue, we have to protect the resource. At one point, I think 2 years ago, the Department of Agriculture had in fact suspended the catching of small pieces within this region, because it has totally destroyed the area, because they cannot, not only the fishermen, but even the commercial fishing cannot anymore draw fish in that area, because there was so much destruction. Perhaps there is need to regulate. For one, they regulate the technologies that is being used. Subject to this activity, we should be minded also of our resource. We should sustain this resource. We should just not allow a continuous destruction of all this resource. So that's our one objective in providing here. That is why the problem is, at the same time, while they are drawing resource there is still no even provision in the grant of the authority to provide support to the sustenance payments of the community. So that's one. That is why the Fishery Code of the Army they were proposing, there were sunshine provisions there, among which is the payment of taxes drawn by this industry also in local government units, so that when they are drawing all the resources, they're also contributing to the development of the area where they are drawing the piece. So that's the basic reason in balance in our provision here. So I think, well, admittedly, the 22, I think, was based from a study. A study on how we will be able to protect because if you talk of 22, if they're saying that the porciner can draw as much as 15 kilometers, so at least you are protecting 7.7 within the shoreline to sustenance fishermen.
Commissioner Joe? Yeah. Commissioner Joe, ano naman agreed naman po tayong lahat together what Secretary Dominguez said. The how do you say, the responsibility of that area, of course, you have to maintain the sustainability of the fish stocks there for local consumption. Pero ang isang complaint kasi ng mga fishing industry, and the reason why I say this is because, as sabi ni Senator Sherwin, we try to craft a Bansamoro basic law that is clear, concise, and as much as possible, everybody happy, not only in the Bansamoro area, but everywhere else. Their complaint lang is, there's a national law, they comply with the national fisheries code and the law provided for by the BFAR, Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. They've got guidelines. So, ang complaint nila is that should be, is Bansamoro the Bansamoro region part of the BFAR in terms of the guidelines, or will they create their own? So that, I'm just putting the issues on hand that we can discuss further later on. Because I'm just happy that the Secretary is here, so that the Secretary can hear this, being from Mindanao and General Santos, and Sarangani, which is a big canning industry. The issues on allowing them first, will they be allowed to fish in these areas? Number one. Number two, they're worried of harassment or raids done by the Bansamoro government. By the way, they say now they're getting that harassment from the provincial governments already. So the provincial governments already sometimes raiding their boats and stopping them using the provincial fisheries authority. And then third is they are not opposed to a sort of monetary retribution. In other words, charge them a franchise, charge the company a franchise to enter the area, or charge them taxation per boat that comes into the area. They want to share in the wealth of the Bansamoro autonomy. Sabi nila, wala ang problema sa amin yan kasi nagbabayad naman kami. We don't mind making it official. We can give a substantial amount of taxation or fees to the Bansamoro for the fishing areas. Ang gusto lang nila maging klaro, clear, and concise na hindi sila ma-outright ban. Kasi they can't explain right now to their constituencies. They feel that there might be an outright ban, and therefore they may have to go to Papua New Guinea or somewhere else to fish and mawawala ng trabaho. It will be the gain of the Papua New Guinea's people who will be the ones being hired and not anymore the Filipinos. So, yun lang po, Commissioner. We're not saying we understand the right of the Bansamoro people in their fishing grounds. They should be priority. As I would fight for my people in Bukidnon and Northern Mindanao, I would do the same if it was a federal state. Pero yung akin lang, siguro we can come up with a clear-cut policy in the Bansamoro particularly on the fishing industry, on the fishing grounds. Commissioner Joe?
What will be transferred would be perhaps the authority to issue the grant of permit, because it will now be given to the Bansamoro. And if the grant of permit is good, perhaps we can provide that they can participate, they can operate. But the grant of permit will already be participatory with not only local government units, but with the regional government. That would assure also that the regional government can protect the general welfare of its people. At the same time, we can protect the canning industry because they will be only regulated, but they can still participate. They can still operate. That provision could be provided for. After all, we do not like, we want to share the resource. But not really, sharing the resource should also benefit our people. So that's perhaps the the reason why the Bansemer, the arm has provided for a fishery act. But unfortunately, it was not implemented because they said you have no waters. You have no waters. There is no jurisdiction of that to enforce that law because that is why the authority comes from the national government. But in an autonomy like this, under the principle of subsidiarity, of course, similar to federalism, you should give the people on the ground the opportunity to provide the regulation so that they can protect also their interests while at the same time allowing other people to participate in the exploration of the resource. So perhaps that provision could be included to assure the canning industry that they will not be barred from coming into the into these Bansemer waters.
I'd just like to make an appeal to the commissioners. With that said, let's work it out. Let's work it out. Kasi malaking industriya din ito. Kababayan din natin ito taga Mindanao. Ayaw naman natin sila magalit din sa Bangsamoro. Anyway, it is a grant, as you said. You can grant the franchise. You can remove the franchise. You can take away the grant. If they overfish, if they practice illegal fishing methods, definitely you can remove the grant and you can enforce the law in this particular area. But let's keep an open mind in this discussion. So that way, yes, Commissioner Lidas.
Mr. Chair, I would like to take this opportunity. When I was listening to Secretary Dominguez, the concept of transparency. I come from the academe. We organize movements for anti-corruption together with our students and our youth. If you don't mind, I can read my thoughts. I was writing it.
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Commissioner.
The freedom of information involves two movements and commitments. First is the transparency on the part of the government to disclose and share relevant information for public awareness and scrutiny. But it also involves the corresponding vigilance and capacity building on the part of the citizens. Even if the government websites display all information, this will be a little value if the citizenry is not equipped and excited to make use of and make sense of the shared data. The Bansemer Transition Commission is a collegial body, and therefore this is just my personal view and my personal opinion, which I would like to recommend to the subcommittee on the BBL. I hope that there is a provision in the BBL regarding training, capacity building, and provision of channels for citizens monitoring and appreciation. Let's involve the youth in the civil society movement. Together with Commissioner Amal, we've been training our youth, the Bangsamoro youth, to be actively involved in the crafting of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. And last week, when we were together with Senator Gatchalian, he informed me about the safety measures. So I hope the technical working group would also include safety measures with regard to transparency.
Commissioner, could you give us specific provisions to amend or to add?
To add, I think.
To add,
yeah,
please,
to add.
so that we can add it already. You know, our staff is limited. Our knowledge of the Bangsamoro people is limited as well. I do have hired staff, additional staff lawyers, and we can work together with you. I think I'm going to kidnap all of you literally next week. I'm going to host you. I think kidnap is not a good word. I will host you. I withdraw my statement on kidnap. But I would like to house the Bangsamoro Transition Commission at our expense here in Manila. We'd like to invite all the members of the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, together with our technical working groups of the senators that are here. We are going to sit down for 3 days, or you'll have to ask excuse from your wives and your husbands, excuse slip. And we will put in the best and the brightest ideas. Already, I know the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, BTL, has already the best inputs coming up from a collegial body. But let's strengthen it some more. I think the idea there is to strengthen it some more. And with the inputs of the government agencies as well in as inputs. So Secretary, I know you have to leave. Sorry, Secretary. I know you may have to leave at noontime. So just a short assignment, Secretary, for the department, because I think this is a game changer. I've seen I reviewed the previous mode, AD, and the other Bangsamoro Basic Law. Sir, I think the BTC version, I think, is probably one of the best that we can achieve at this point in time with our president shepherding it in the cabinet. And once it's done, it's done. We come up with the basic organic act for the Bangsamoro region. So I'll need your support, sir. Maybe you can give me an undersecretary with the particular provisions that you would like to strengthen and add, especially on the fiscal autonomy side and issues on taxation. Yes, sir. To join us with the technical working group. Especially si Commissioner Billy Dulay. Sir, kailangan natin malaman ano ba ang national, ano ba ang regional taxation. Banggit na natin as much as possible. Then we can put a phrase under to be provided further by the Bangsamoro Parliament in terms of regional taxation. Yung hindi pa nailagay, we can give the Bangsamoro Parliament, just like Congress and the Senate, the chance to come up with additional revenue in terms of the Bangsamoro region. But yes,
Sir, very quickly lang, and Secretary, I raised this during the last hearing when Yusek Agbayani was here, Agabi was here on the loans, no? Because in the provisions on the loans, it's quite general, no? And it's not, the law is actually giving them the power to borrow, but it's not clear who will pay in an event of a default. So we have to be very clear with that also and set up mechanisms to make sure that the borrower can pay. That's a basic concept naman po.
Senator Gatchalian, if, Mr. Chairman, if you will read your history, when the U.S. first got together, they had a very loose association, a very loose federal system. And actually, most of the states, this is in the 1700s, borrowed on their own. And they actually went bankrupt. That's why they had to redo the federal system. And that's why people like Alexander Hamilton came into prominence, because he wanted a strong national government, because to lose a national government was not financially successful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Being a fellow Mindanaoan, I know we have a lot at stake here. And the success of the Bangsamoro area is our success. Sabi ko nga dyan sa ating mga kapatid sa Zamboanga, I was in a long interview this morning. Of course, I was listening in before they interviewed me, and they were pilfering, you know, the whole essence of this exercise. And I basically told them, guys, let's keep an open mind and an open heart. Why? Just like Cagayan de Oro is now the 10th fastest city in the Philippines, in terms of growth. It's not because of the Cagayanons, because there's only a few of them. It's because of Misamis Oriental, Misamis Occidental, and yours truly from Bukidnon, who does our shopping in Cagayan de Oro. Nandyan yung SM, nandyan na lahat ng malls. And that spurs the growth of Cagayan de Oro. So I said to our brothers in Zamboanga City, let this be an opportunity for our brothers in the Bangsamoro to also enrich themselves culturally, traditionally, and economically. And with that richness, it will spill over to the people of Zamboanga in terms of tourism, in terms of economic development. So sabi ko, and this falls through also for the rest of Mindanao. Because pag may tigil na natin yung putukan, matigil na natin yung extremism, tourism will grow. You know, Secretary, we saw it with our own eyes. I've been 3 times to Tawi-Tawi, but I haven't been to Sulu in a long time, and we were in Basilan flying with the military choppers. We saw the best beaches. Talong-talo wala yung Boracay. I'm sorry to say this, no? With all due respect to my brothers in Boracay. Walang-wala sila. Ito salmon-colored yung beach. Pink, salmon-colored yung soft like powder. If we can just promote peace in this region, tourism will follow. It will become the tourism powerhouse of the Philippines. I think nobody else will go to the other islands. The beauty of Palawan is because they have not seen the beauty of these island provinces, many of which these gentlemen and ladies represent. But I thank Secretary Dominguez for coming. I'll be closely coordinating with you, sir, next week. Maybe we'll have dinner or lunch in your office so that I can also show you our final output in the technical working group. But I have other stakeholders here as well. But before you go, maybe Secretary, I think Commissioner Joe would like to add to the statement.
First, I'd just like to state for the record that our good secretary is familiar with the province of Sulu and Tawi-Tawi. because his mother is from Holo, and he has been traveling to Holo and even to the island municipality of Siasi. And he is familiar with all the beautiful beaches in the province of Sulu. Now, for the record, I'd just like to emphasize that the provision on the Bansemer waters is already a provision provided for under the Code of the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. This is code in 1999. If you note the coverage, it says the provision of this code shall be enforced in the armed waters which shall extend to offshore fishing grounds up to and including all waters 22 and 1/2 kilometers from its coastline, but inside the territorial waters of the Philippines. So this is the basis for that. And I think the passage of this Code of Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao Fishery Code is based on Republic Act 6734, even at the time. So there is already a law. So I think we just want to put
Thank
it
you,
to the
Commissioner
record.
Joe. Yeah,
We will
actually,
give you the copy, Mr.
that will
Chair.
help me defend this provision,
Yes,
because
we will
when my colleagues will ask me, but these people are complaining, but sir, it's just an adoption of a law that was already passed.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, but that's why wala silang problema dyan as long as may walang outright ban. Yan
Yes,
lang yung
yes.
sinasabi nila. And I think that provision could be added.
Added, yes.
That of course in compliance with the regulatory framework of the Bangsamoro,
Yes.
let's say fishing regulators or whatever, as long as they pass the particular requirements, they may be allowed to fish in this area. So parang ganun lang siguro. But we still have other resource persons, and I'd like to recognize each one of the resource persons that are here. Para hindi naman po sayang yung gasolina ninyo, although their fuel helps in the train of Secretary Dominguez. Helps in the income of government. Secretary, thank you so much for your time. I also have with us here for the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. Yes, Commissioner Dulay.
May I request Mr. Chairman to be excused, but my deputy commissioners are all here as resource persons. if
We appreciate
necessary.
Sir Cesar for Sir Billy for coming. We really
Sir.
appreciate that, sir.
Thank
you
you.
very much.
My deputy
Historic po ito.
commissioner should be here.
Historic po ito. That's why I'm so glad that you were able to attend this hearing. Thank you, Sir Billy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. You're excused, sir. We also have with us for the Bangsamoro Transition Commission with the with all due respect to those on the right side, if I may start recognizing those on the left, all the way to the right. We also have with us members of the Sultanate of Lanao who visited me yesterday. We have the sultans of the Sultanate of Lanao. We'll also recognize them a bit later by the presence of Dr. Lomondon and some of the members of the Sultanate here in the back. But let's start with Assistant Regional Treasurer. We have with us the Assistant Regional Treasurer of ARM and Chief Cash Division of the ARM. Thank you very much, ma'am and sir, for coming. We have some questions, and some of my colleagues had some questions on the existing ARM provisions. Or for example, on the, let's say, on this issue on fishing, on the fisheries. Do the fishing industry proponents, sir, if you're capable of answering this, do the proponents of the fishing industry, the canning industry, the tuna and sardines industry, coordinate with the armed government, with Governor Mujiba Taman on particular permits and licenses to be able to fish in the waters outside, on the arm area? Mr. Petron, kayo ba po ay may-ari ng Petron? Hindi naman po.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gani Petron of the Regional Treasury. I think I don't have the information. Very sorry to that. I don't have the information to respond to your question. I have some ideas on fiscal matters, but I think it's not yet the matter to discuss unless Your Honor will give me the opportunity to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Petron. We'll go na lang from this side all the way to the other side. We'll start. Next resource person will be Ma'am Hassan. Any comments that you want to make po tungkol dito po sa BBL?
Thank you, sir. May I refer you to our Finance Director, Attorney Montano.
Sir?
Mr. Chairman, good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Before anything else, I'd like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude from the Office of the Regional Governor for inviting the finance team of the Office of the Regional Governor in order to provide some insights with respect to the crafting of the Bansemer Basic Law. And rest assured that whatever good practices that we have developed or enhanced during the time of Regional Governor Hataman, we are more than willing to share it with this committee so that we can have a better version of the BBL insofar as budgeting and taxation are concerns. Now, with respect to the block grant, Mr. Chairman, it is very laudable on the part of the regional government considering that the 33 billion budget for 2018 is actually enough for us, and how much more is the 6% of the net national internal revenue that will be considered as part of the block grant for the Bangsamoro new government. Now, maybe if some issues or concerns that will be raised with respect to the operation of the ARMM, then we are more than willing to share our insights, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Sir, you mentioned for 2018, ang budget ng ARM is 33 billion.
Yes, sir.
That's the total budget na po.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And I'm just curious now, how do you subdivide the 33 billion to the different provinces? Is there a formula that you follow, or meron pa kayong ganun?
Mr. Chair, basically, the different agencies, devolved agencies, propose their budget to the national government. And right now, we have a total of 14 billion pesos, 14.6 billion pesos for personal services. We have 4.7 billion pesos for MOE, and a total of 14 billion pesos for the capital outlay. So basically, this is being, yes, Mr. Chair.
14 is PS.
Yes.
Then,
4 billion for MOE.
okay.
And 14 billion for capital outlay. And this is being allocated among the different regional agencies of the regional government.
Sweldo ng teachers. Yeah, sweldo ng teachers in basic education. Are you also giving out the salaries?
It's the national government that provides for that, but basically the regional government provides for the number of positions that will be being filled up, and that requires budget for purposes of hiring teachers for the regional government.
So you provide the number of available positions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And then national government will fund those positions.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And then for higher education, ano po yung mga SUCs? Kanya-kanya na sila yun.
It's different. We do not actually have information regarding that.
Do you have your own tertiary
yes,
higher
we have
education?
Commission on Higher Education, Mr. Chair.
But meron kayong sariling local university or college sa ARM?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I cannot answer that question with respect to that issue.
All right. Sige po.
Just to continue with the question on the teachers, how come we still get complaints like this morning? I was interviewed, and I get complaints na meron pang teachers hindi nasasweldohan sa ARM. Yan ba ay teachers na hired by ARM? Or hindi siguro taga DepEd kasi would the salaries of the DepEd officials, the teachers there, be automatic in I guess it would be downloaded to their accounts, to the bank accounts. May teachers ba ang ARM? I know, I remember there was an issue in the past on the budget of ghost students and ghost teachers. And then I had Muji Mataman, the Governor Mataman, and I'd like to put this on record. No, I'd just like to say that Governor Muji Mataman is probably one of the best governors that we've had for ARM. And I'd like you to tell him that I said that in this hearing. But still, even though that he's run it quite well, there still are issues of teachers not being paid. Does the ARM, sir, hire teachers at this point in time as an augmentation to the DepEd staffing?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, the processing of the appointments is still ongoing with respect to the hiring of new teachers. It just so happened that for the past 12 months, the Secretary of the Department of Education for ARMM was not actually confirmed by the Regional Legislative Assembly. And so that just this January, the regional governor actually appointed in OIC capacity the Chief of Staff Attorney Russell Mitmug. But more than anything else, the processing of the application is still ongoing, and hopefully, maybe just the first and second week of January, the regional governor was able to sign a few appointments for the newly hired teachers. And with respect to the issue on non-payment of salaries, I think it would be better, Mr. Chair, that a formal letter be sent to the office of the Deputy Secretary so that we can properly address it. Because right now, I do not have that information as to what really went wrong, why the teachers failed to receive their salaries, Mr. Chair.
Maybe on another hearing, we can discuss that on the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao or the budget, during the budget deliberation. But these are certain areas, Commissioner Joe, and to the commissioners, that we have to clarify. Kasi ang sabi nila, may nagtatanong sa akin. For example, Senator Ralph asked me yesterday, yung black grant ba yan? Kasama na ba teacher salaries dyan? So, we need to know that because malaki yung budget ng teachers' salaries. For example, what do you conceive to be part of the block grant? Will it be the DepEd teachers of right now, according to Attorney Mangutara, is that the teachers in the ARM are being funded by national government? Is that correct?
Yes, Mr.
Hindi
Chair.
galing sa 33 billion yan.
Kasali na po doon.
Kasama na?
Yes.
So hindi national, kasama na yung 33 billion.
Yes.
So that's part of the 14 billion PS?
Yes, part.
Personal
Basically, a big chunk of the 14 billion PS goes to the DepEd.
Okay. So it goes to the DepEd. Yes,
So they give you the 33, and then kasali na ho dyan sa 33 pang bayad po ng sweldo
po ng mga teachers.
The teachers are employed by ARM.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So they're not employed by DepEd National.
Hindi naman po sila empleyado ng national government. But
Okay.
basically, katulad from the perspective of the ARMM, the budget comes from the national government. But it's being lodged in the budget of ARMM with respect to the payment of salaries of the teachers.
let's be clarified with that. Aside from the PS on the teachers, where else does it go to? The other devolved services?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Department of Agriculture in the ARM, Department of Health. Paano yung hindi kasama dito PhilHealth? Insurance sa 33 billion.
Kasali din po.
Ha?
Binabayaran kasi I think it's part of our PS. Yung binabayaran po na PhilHealth ng mga empleyado.
Sa empleyado to. Pero yung sa PhilHealth ng iyong mga kababayan doon, that's national government.
Yes, that's national. It's a national program.
National program.
Opo.
Okay. Sa capital outlay, do you have an idea on the spending of the 14B? Pakatanungin sa amin kasi yung existing, may we ask probably a document from you, sir, yung disbursement ng inyong 33 billion for 2018 or 2017 ba? 2017. Yung 14 billion PS, yung breakdown nun, sabi nyo, teachers natin, and of course, the employees of the ARM government,
Yes.
etc., etc. And then the 4.7B on MOOE, may we have a breakdown of that?
Yes, we can provide you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
please. And lalo na yung 14B on capital outlay. we'd like to have a breakdown on that because I may be asked on the floor by my colleagues, what's the existing disbursement of armed government today in terms of their budget? For example, how much their budget is and what's the breakdown? So, may request that from the group.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will provide.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
So, yeah.
Itong 33 billion na you mentioned, ito yung subsidy.
Opo, yan na po yung total budget ng ARMM.
That's a total budget. Ilan dito ang internally generated, ilan ang from national?
Yung internal revenue share po, it's actually part of the regional budget of ARMM, but the DBM provides ceiling for this. For 2018, I think the ceiling is 800 million pesos. And what we have proposed last year is 1.6 billion pesos. And the threshold that is being allowed with the DBM is 800 million pesos. And the other half of the locally generated funds is 800 is actually placed in the negative list. Now, upon the collection of these revenues, that's the time that the DBM will release this other half. Now, for 2019, we're actually proposing for 2 billion pesos locally income generated revenues. And the Assistant Treasurer can elaborate or expound on this with respect to the generation of local revenues. So, dalawa po actually yung tinatanggap ng ARMM. Meron yung coming from the DBM. Ito po yung regular budget natin na 33 billion pesos. And then yung income generated, local revenues. The Assistant Treasurer can expand on this, Mr. Chair.
Before I recognize Assistant Treasurer, can I just ask, Attorney, when you say the DBM puts a cap on it, meaning you are earning more, but the DBM will only allow you to retain 800 million?
I think it's safe to say that we have that projection. But of course, it depends upon the collection of the revenues. So practically, we agree with that kind of policy or setup. Then anyway, later on, after these revenues are being collected, eventually this being downloaded also to the regional government.
So just for clarity, in 33 billion, this is the revenue also.
That's the, yes.
Okay.
It's a revenue also. That's actually in the GA, the General Appropriations
Ano yung
Act.
breakdown nito? Ilan ang sa subsidy, ilan ang sa locally generated?
Part 2 nung 33 billion pesos yung locally generated na supposedly it's about 1.6 billion pesos depending on the forecast, yes, forecast of the regional treasury. Now, ang pinapasok po nila doon is yung basically the revenue forecast for the next fiscal year. So, supposedly, if it's 1.6 billion, kasali na po siya doon sa 33.4 billion. But it so happened that what is being placed in the immediate release for the ARMM is the half of it. Because we shall be waiting for the other half upon generation of the revenues.
So, kung 1.6 billion ang locally generated, so essentially 31 yung galing sa national, tama?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
31,
Opo.
So total
Opo.
is 33.
Yes, exactly.
How will that change, Commissioner Joe, and to the Commissioner Jajuri under our new setup sa BBL? Kasi may cap yung mga DBM sa kanila even spending power, how do you call it, spending of the funds. Under the new Bansemer Basic Law and the Bansemer Autonomous Region, how do you conceptualize now the power of the DBM, particularly on the issues of revenue? Diba we're increasing revenue now to 75-25, and ang gusto natin, ayaw natin maglimos, diba? Dito sa DBM at sa Manila na automatic yung pag-download ng pondo sa atin. How do you see the concept with the new law in place? And to correct the problem that the existing arm is having now in terms of budgets?
Well, Mr. Chair, basically, it will be an entirely different system. So the amount that will be given to the Bangsamoro will be based on the formula that will be approved and included in the BBL. So there's no more need for the Bangsamoro to comply with certain requirements as to, the cap for the budget for the ARMM. Well, in this case, for the Bangsamoro. So the subsidy or the fund transfer that will come from central government will be determined on the basis of the formula.
And that is automatically appropriated back to the Bangsamoro region.
Yes,
Hindi
Mr.
na walang
Chair.
cap na may lalagay. Commissioner Joe?
Mr. Chair, let me point out that at present, the budget of the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao is included as an executive budget, submitted by the Department of Budget and Management to Congress of the Philippines. And it is the Congress of the Philippines that approves that budget. Specifically, the budget submitted by the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao as an executive budget are more detailed. It is already provided. In fact, the cap mentioned is a general cap for all budgets of the executive budget. So there is no participation of the Regional Legislative Assembly in the appropriation, so to speak, because it has already been appropriated by the Congress of the Philippines. What was mentioned as the local funds or the share of the funds, these local funds are shared from the collection of provinces and cities in the autonomous region. This is subject to a memorandum of agreement between the Department of BIR, the Department of Finance, and the Bureau of Treasury. That is why there is a delay always in the sharing. Because local funds, from my experience when I was in the arm, will not come readily every year because of the concept of one fund policy. We first remit all the funds to national, and the national will again allocate the share to the region. This is the only amount of money before subject of the Public Works Act of the Regional Legislative Assembly. This is the only time that the Regional Assembly participates in the appropriation. But even now, I was informed that the Regional Assembly are no longer back and forth because there is already an itemized breakdown of this fund. What is different in the current Bangsamoro law is we will be given a block grant that will be appropriated by the Bangsamoro Parliament, so that we will be able to address the concerns of the region, because I think they are more familiar with their districts, they're more familiar with the entire region as a whole. So the difference is year by year, we will not be included in the executive budget when submitted to the House of Representatives, because there is already an allocation provided for in the block grants. These block grants will now be appropriated by the Bangsamoro Parliament, depending on the guidelines that will be set, as already mentioned, so that now there is really autonomy. Because in the municipal council, it is the municipal council who approves the appropriation. In the province, it is ang Sangguniang Panlalawigan who approves the appropriation of the province of Bukidnon in particular. But in the autonomous government, no. The Regional Legislative Assembly, so to say, is not involved in the appropriation because it's Congress who appropriates. So that's the two different. We will not be coming to the Congress every year because it is automatically appropriated and automatically released. So that's the difference between the two. As an exemplification of what we call maximum fiscal autonomy. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go, we continue discussing the issues on fiscal autonomy. I'd like to also hear the points of former Mayor June Simon, being a former mayor of Quezon City and also a leader on the local government code. Mayor, would you like to give your statement?
Maraming salamat po, Senator Bansemer, Senator Wing Gatchalian, sa lahat po ng mga kasama po natin. Isang magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Una, ano po ba ang pakialam ni June Simon dito sa ating talakayan? Noong pong 1989, nung panahon po ni Zakaria Candao, ako po yung nagtulak sa kanya pong kandidatura. At noong 1985-86, kasama rin po ako nung grupo po ni Cory na kumakampanya po sa Muslim Mindanao. At yung 1974 po, isa po ako sa mga nagtatago sa Cotabato City, sa lugar po yan, na nawawanted po ako ng panahon po ni Marcos. Kaya dyan po yung exposure ko po. No? Bukod po ron, sa tingin ko po, bihira naman po Kristiyano nagtayo ng moske. Ako po nakapagpatayo ng moske sa Quezon City na using private funds. Ano? At nakumbisi ko rin po yung mayor ng Montalban na magtayo ng sementeryo para sa mga kapatid po natin Muslim. So bagay po ito ay, narito po ako para talakayin nga po itong fiscal autonomy. No? Ako po kasi nangangamba na, tulad na nabanggit niyo, paano po ba natin i-audit itong pera nito? Yan po lagi pinag-uusapan. Ano? Ngayon na, tama po yung sinabi nyo sa inyo pong preface, sa inyo pong batas na 5 of the 11 poorest provinces in the Philippines, 5 are from ARMM. No? But it is also true that if you base it on the amount of money being spent by candidates in elections, 6 of the 20 richest governors in the Philippines are also from ARMM. Kanya makita niyo po na dumadating po yung pera, kaya na nagagastos po ba ng tama, no? Ako naman ay tama po sinabi po nung private sector kanina na we have to monitor, account, and give proper transparency. But you first have to prove to me that this is doable. Na meron pong auditor na pupunta sa Darapanan o kaya sa Abubakar para i-audit po yung pera na yan at kaya po niyang i-audit. Dahil kung hindi, sa ngayon po, wala pa po tayo doon sa mga lugar na yan, narito pa lang tayo sa mga local governments, nahihirapan na po tayo i-audit po yung pera. Dahil ako po, sa palagay ko, tama po ibibigay po natin pera eh. Ang importante lang, hindi po pupunta po yung pera to the peoples of Mindanao, of ARMM, hindi po to some people only. So, napakahalaga po yung proseso natin ng pag-audit. Kung mga kanina rin po, binabagit po natin yung 15-22 kilometers from the shoreline, nagpupunta po ako ng tawi-tawi. Yung po mga barko na yan, less than 2 kilometers from the shoreline. Ano, pagdating po ng gabi, mas marami pa po ilaw yung shoreline ng Languyan kaysa sa Ross Boulevard eh. So, talagang naririyan po yan. Ano? At saka, when you talk of money is being collected, yung po pera na nakukolekta, dito sa mga ito, siyempre nagtatakot po sila. Meron ng municipal na nagbibigay kayo, meron ng probinsya, meron ng regional government na nagbibigay kayo. Ang tanong ko po ay, ilan yung may resibo, ilan po yung walang resibo? Ano? Meron po tayong grupo ng ports monitoring po dyan, yung po nangungulikta po ng one-page fees, ano? They refused na yung cheque pay to the government, kailangan cash po yung bayaran. So sa lahat po ng mga ito, paano nga po natin i-audit? At ang isa pang nakikita kong missing po rito, pag pinag-usapan po yung armas, kailan po ba isusurrender yung armas? Dahil hindi po tayo pwedeng gumawa ng forgive me for not calling it bangsang moro. Dahil ako po, Tagalog, ang bangsa po, ang ibig sabihin sa lengguwahe ko, country. At nung bata po ako, pag tinawag ko yung kaibigan ko Muslim na Moro, isuntukan na kami. Kanya, iwasan ko na po, tawagin muna, doon muna ako sa Muslim Mindanao. Ano? Ang tanong ko lang po ay, paano pa taga-uunlad? Ano? Alam niyo po, nung ako po alkalde, madalas po ako riyan. Marami po akong mga kaibigan. Isang kaibigan ko, pagpunta ko ron, dami kong ideya para umunlad. Tulad yun rin po ako, Senator Mig Subiri. No? Ang dami kong mga ideya paano umunlad po yung bayan. Gagawa tayo ng sewage processing, gagawa ng asukarera dito sa lugar neto. Ang sagot po niya sa akin ay, there you go again, June. Try to transfer your culture to our culture. So nasyak ako. A few months later, I had some new, bigger ideas kung paano po yayaman yung lugar. Sagutan naman niya sa akin, there you go again, June. Try to transfer your culture to our culture. Until I realized na feudal nga pala sila eh. Kaya yung mga statistics na maraming mahihirap, talaga magkakaroon po ng maraming mahihirap. Dahil meron po sa feudal government. Meron po sultan, may dato, may governor, mayor, ngayon, at saka kailangan po ng mga mahihirap na mamamayan. So once again, para manatili po yung struktura na yun, hindi po pwedeng yumaman ng ordinaryong tao. Ngayon, ang gusto po natin mangyari, yumaman yung ordinaryong tao. Para yumaman po yung ordinaryong tao, kailangan ma-monitor po natin yung pera. Ito po, additional 40 billion pesos neto bibigyan natin. Ang mangyayari po dyan, Makati now will be the 6th richest local government in the Philippines because the first 5 will be the ARMM provinces. Ang ibig sabihin po nun, kung magagastos po itong pera na tama, meron po silang libreng edukasyon, libreng hospitalisasyon, lahat libre na, pati po yung birthday cake, libre na rin po yun. Ano? Ang problema lang mangyayari po ba yun? Pag hindi po natin po na-in place, pero from the very start, sinabi ko na, if you want to solve the problems of the ARMM, kailangan yung dalawang commissions iayos natin. The Commission on Elections and the Commission on Audit. Pag naayos po natin yan, mawawala na po yung in quotation marks na feudalismo, na ako yung alkalde, yung asawa ko, susunod na alkalde, tapos yung mga ninuno namin, sila na rin. Ano? At mawawala na rin po yung mayayaman lang yung may hawak po ng pera. Binanggit niyo po kanina rito na they take it as their private money. Now, this committee is to show to me that that will not happen. Because right now, I do not see how it will not happen. Ngayon, binanggit nga po ng ating pong private sector na meron po youth group. Maybe you can really use the youth group. But unfortunately, kailangan po talaga ng tapang dito eh. So, yun lamang po at isang magandang umaga, hapon.
Thank you, Mayor Jun. Senator Gatchalian.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would like to probe further po itong revenues, local revenues being derived in ARMM. Kasi if you do the simple math, no, out of their total revenue, only 4% lang galing sa local revenue. Now, itong 1.6 billion, saan po nanggagaling to? Ano ang sources po nitong 1.6 billion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yung pong subsidy ng national government, yun yung tinutukoy ni attorney kanina.
But kanina sabi ni attorney, 1.6
yes.
comes from internally generated or locally generated.
Noon po, yung share ng autonomous region sa internal revenue collections collected by BIR is retained or was retained by the regional government. Pero nagbago yung collection and withholding system, kaya nagkaroon ng tax remittance advice. I think it was before 2000. Yung collection estimated na tax, withhold na ng DVM sa kanila. So, wala nang cash na bababa.
What's the source of this? Is this real estate tax? Itong 1.6?
Income tax ang karamihan po dyan.
Share from income tax?
Yeah, collection ng BIR na kasama ang income tax.
So lahat-lahat ng kinukolekt sa Bansemer area, o sa ERMM area, a portion of that accrues to ARMM?
Yes, 70% po.
70% yes. Accrues to ARMM?
Yes po.
So ulitin ko po, itong 1.6 nanggagaling sa lahat ng income tax. I would assume corporate tax, personal income tax, lahat ng kinukolekt na ng BIR, 70% accrues to
tama po,
to ARMM. Wala na pong portion of real estate taxes? I'm just trying to understand the source.
I don't
so ito purely is the 70%?
Meron po kasama dyan, sir, kasi nagpasa ang Regional Assembly ng Muslim Mindanao Autonomy Act number 49, yung aming revenue code. So meron pang mga taxes doon na kinukolekta namin.
Economic enterprise,
tulad ng travel tax, natural wealth tax. So part po nung sinasabi ni attorney na pera ay galing doon sa regional collections ang tawag namin.
So can you break down itong sabihin to us na lang, no? Itong 1.6 kasi from my understanding, itong 1.6 is the target, tama? Hindi lang na-reach itong target, kaya binibigay muna kalahati, which is 800. But once na-breach mo yan, ibibigay yung iba. Ganun yung form.
Ganito po, Mr. Chairman. Yung 1.6 billion na target
is
estimated. Estimated na target halimbawa ng regional government para sa local fund, yan yung binubuo ng share ng regional government, which is 35% of the 70%. Doon sa internal revenue collections, nare-remit sa amin ng BIR through DVM. At saka plus po doon yung sinasabi ko po kanina na regional collections. Opo. Yan yung 1.6.
Can you break down kung ilan dito sa 1.6 ang from the share of income taxes and the actual local locally generated.
Idagdag ko lang po, Mr. Chairman, na doon sa 70% na collection ng BIR na nire-remit sa amin as estimated for a certain year like 2007 and 2008, 35% nire-remit namin sa mga local government units na source ng collection. So, ang natitira doon, yun yung ina-appropriate ng Regional Assembly, tinutukoy ni attorney na regional appropriations.
So, again, I want to understand, ilan po talaga yung locally generated, meaning from economic enterprise, from travel tax, from mining permits, etc., etc.
I have data, Mr. Chairman, but
is it 10% of that 1.6?
Less than.
Less than 10%?
It's about 6.5%.
About 6.5%?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm trying to understand po dahil in the totality of revenues, 4% lang po galing sa internally generated. But out of that 1.6, 70% comes from the taxes collected by BIR.
Yes.
Di yung actual talagang nanggagaling po from economic enterprise, from the others, is only 6.5% of that 1.6 billion.
Yes.
So in reality po, yung powers na binibigay ho sa inyo, maliit lang ho talaga nagagamit to create internally generated funds.
Mr. Chairman, yan po yung gusto ko sana expound ng konti. Kasi based sa records namin since 1991 up to 2017, meron about 240 billion doon sa subsidy na na-release to the autonomous region. Ang na-collect lang ng regional government is about 15.9 billion. So kung titingnan niyo, lalabas yung percentage ng locally generated na pera. This is really overemphasizing that the region is really dependent to the national government. I think maraming explanation po yan sa tingin namin kasi kami yung nasa ground for several years. So, siguro, nakikita namin kasi sunod sa draft mismo ng BBL sa aming paningin as people on the ground, marami pa tayong dapat gawin. Kasi,
go ahead po.
Isa po kasing basic na information is, sa ngayon, ang total income halimbawa ng GOP through the BIR, through the BTR, through the BOC, ang sharing nila is, ang latest na nakita ko noon is about 86% BIR BOC ang na-generate niya. The rest, BTR. Kung titingnan natin kung ano-ano itong mga sources ng taxes, 3 lang yata ang binigay sa BBL, yung documentary stamp tax, estate tax, ano pa yung dalawa? Opo. So kung titingnan po natin, talagang maliit talaga ito siya. Kung ma-increase man niya ang existing na locally generated income, is not that significant. Kasi na-retain ng national government yung collection or imposition of collection as provided sa National Internal Revenue Code, no? At saka yung sa duties at saka taripa. So yun po yung parang picture right now na sa tingin ko, even with the BBL, we will continue to be dependent to the national government. Kasi unang-una po, maliit lang man ang tax base ng autonomous region or even the Bansamoro, I think, Bansamoro area, maliit ang tax base niyan. Right now, ang collection dyan is about 2 billion a year yung nag-generate ng BIR. So maliit talaga yun siya. Kahit ano pang gawin mo. Hindi naman namin pwede magawa-gawa ng mas maraming taxes kasi lalong mahirapan yung mga tao namin. So sa tingin ko yung pagiging self-dependent, especially in terms of generating funds by the arm and even by the Bansamoro, will be a long tawag dito, matagal masyado yan siya ma-achieve unless we will become like Makati, like Cebu, or even Davao. Thank you.
Sir, in your one question lang, Mayor. in your expert opinion and experience, sir, kasi nakakagulat na yung internally generated is only 4%, and in which you can attribute only 6.5% to yung actually na generate ng ARMM government. No? Ang tanong ko ho, in your experience, with this new proposal, no, can we mai-improve ba ho yung internally generated capacity ng new Bangsamoro government?
Ito po yung pananaw namin. Una, kung magkaroon ng magandang peace in order, magpasok ang maraming investment, maraming negosyo na papasok, very possible na talagang may-improve dramatically yung local collections. Pero, gaya ng sinabi ko po kanina, it will take long time for us to be self-sufficient.
Ano po yung, kung meron po kayong isang suggestion na pwedeng gawin para tumaas po yung internally generated revenues, what will be that suggestion?
Ang isa po is, if the national government can help us in the issuance of bonds, or we can engage in capital markets as way of raising funds. Of course, the worthiness of the Bangsamoro is at stake in that case. But ang nakita namin kasi, like the national company and the SPDA, ginaguarantee directly ng national government yung issuance. So, bakit sa amin, halimbawa, hindi pwede sa Bangsamoro? So, isa na nakikita namin na paraan. But of course, we have to pay it. Kung malaking block grant, we can allocate part of that for the debt servicing. No? So, isa yun na nakikita namin. Kasi malaki po yung pwede namin ma-generate. Ang isa kasi problema sa ARM is, we have not been able to invest in the capital market. Kahit T-bills, hindi namin nagagawa yan. Because, una, we don't have the era like the LGUs. Pwede namin gamitin collateral. So, wala kaming pang collateral. So, isa yun. Of course, there are many things that we can discuss for that purpose. Pero, I think, yung time natin medyo maikli. Long before kasi gusto ko rin mag-participate in the drafting, pero siyempre, I understand the bureaucracy. Kasi gusto namin kasi itulong yung experience namin on the ground to be incorporated doon sa drafting. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Petron, please submit to us your young suggestion, and we want to take a look at that also. Iba rin ho kasi yung experience talaga,
Yes.
On the ground. So, submit to us your suggestion or your opinion on this, and we'll take a look, and baka may chance rin na we'll consider some of your suggestions.
Yes, Commissioner Joe.
Just to make it very clear, the source of the local funds, not only the locally generated, but the source given by the national government. It is actually provided under Section 9 of Article 9, Republic Act 1954, which the sources are sharing of internal revenue from natural resources, taxes and fees, and charges. It is provided that the ARM will have a share of 70%, including its component units, 35% to the ARM, the regional government, and 35% to the local government units. And the 30 will go to the central government. But this law provided that for a period of 5 years, even the share of the national government will be given to the ARM, subject to a review after 5 years. In fact, when I was in the ARM, we was working very closely with the regional treasurer. That is the share, the 1.6 billion, which they are now pegging, is the share from this minus the 6%, which is locally generated, either for travel tax to mining tax. These are the taxes. But more importantly, we have a tax code, including the tax on rivers. But that was not implemented. In fact, I had the occasion to address this with Napocor but it was not. I think the failure is another in implementing Section 6, where the payment of taxes. Because what is provided under Republic Act 1954, what corporations, partnerships, or firms directly engaged in business in the autonomous region shall pay the corresponding taxes, fees, and charges in the province or city where the corporation, partnership, or firm is doing business. Corporations, partnership, or firms whose central main office or head office are located outside the autonomous region but which are doing business within its territorial jurisdiction by farming, developing, or utilizing the all must pay there. And this is commonly called by our regional treasurer as the large taxpayers. The assistant treasurer did not mention this. The problem with large taxpayers is they pay their taxes here in Makati, most of them. And therefore, we really don't know how much share of the large taxpayers are generated from the arm. That is why we cannot even get the share of the taxes paid with the large taxpayers. There was even an attempt between me and the regional treasurer. I think the assistant treasurer can bear me out. We went to the BIR asking for a segregation of taxes, but they have not segregated where the taxes of large taxpayers as to those generated from the region and those generated by the main office. That is why 65%, in fact I was kidding the commissioner, because under the National Internal Revenue Code, it's the commissioner who defines where the taxpayers, large taxpayers are paying the taxes. So I think in the Bansemer Basic Law, we reiterate this provision of Section 6 in order that we will allow the payment of taxes there, because there are many corporations operating within the Bangsamoro. Yeah, but they're not paying there. Yeah. So I think I'd just like to clarify that on the point.
Thank you, Commissioner Joy. That's the concept of federalism. Binanggit ko na yung kanina, galit ako dito sa mga multinational. Ubus na yung lupa nun sa Bukidnon, wala na kaming may tanim na mais at tubo, wala na. It's now all pineapples and bananas rented by the multinationals who pay their taxes in Makati. So I agree with that principle. But we have to move quickly because my time constraints and I have an appointment at 1. But Senator Gatchalian, yes, we also have kasi with us the DBM. We'd like to ask the DBM, the BLGF, which is the local government. Senator Gatchalian, you may want to throw questions to these
quick lang,
people as well.
Chairman, this is actually in line with what Secretary Dominguez mentioned earlier, no, that it should be performance-based. And there's now a big debate on ERA, Mr. Chair, and how ERA should be reformulated. This is across the nation, hindi lang mo sa Bangsamoro. Because some of the LGUs became so dependent on ERA, neglecting their power to generate locally generated income or local income. So the same principle applies, no, to what we are discussing right now. That right now kasi 95% comes from subsidy, and then later on, when we increase this from 30 billion to 70 billion, definitely it will dilute whatever locally generating income it's already generating in that region. So my point of the matter, Mr. Chair, and this is there's no answer to this right now, to ponder upon a performance-based mechanism or a mechanism that will encourage the capacity to generate our own income. Use the powers and use the whatever provisions that we gave in the Bangsamoro Basic Law to generate our own revenues. And this cuts across all the LGUs. Ganyan po, nagkakaroon ng debate ngayon on whether the ERA is actually a productive formula or not. And the same principle applies to the BBL, and something to think about, because what we don't want, and I know the commissioners are very idealistic people, and what we don't want is for the next generation to just wait for the block grant to come every year. Total 70 billion to, and it's pegged on internally generated capacity of the national government, which is palaki yan ng palaki. So if it's pegged on a 6% at palaki ng palaki, there's no incentive now to generate our own income. Total, lalaki naman to without doing anything. matulog ka lang, lalaki ito ng lalaki every year. No? Actually, hindi ka the treasurer or the finance people will not do anything. This will grow by itself. No? And that's what we don't want, a culture of dependence to the national government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It's more of a chicken or the egg scenario, and that's the reason being that one of the reasons is conflict. Sinong papasok dyan sino mangingisda dyan from Manila na siguradong baka makidnap pa yun dun sa island provinces? Or sinong papasok dyan na Del Monte o Dole dun sa lugar ng Maguindanao na alam nila baka bombahan sila? But I'll tell you this, if you're talking about fishing, it's one of the richest sources of fishery products. If you're talking about agriculture, yung Maguindanao for me is even richer than Bukidnon in terms of the capability of utilizing it for agriculture. Ang ganda-ganda ng Maguindanao in terms of agriculture. If you're talking about tourism, then, hands down, meron pa bang iba? Sa tingin ko, wala na akong nakitang kagandahan, no? And I'd like to say this, and I get emotional because whenever I visit Bongao and Tawi-Tawi, and you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, lobster, mantis shrimp, tsaka, rock lobster, high blood kami lahat sa kakain ng lobster at seafoods. It's the best. So let's give them the development that they need. And to be honest, it's not that they're asking for more than what the other regions are asking. I have the list here. Region 10 is getting 83.1 billion in development funds. Region 10, that's my region. Sa hambog ko karon, hambugiro ba? But Region 11, 76.4 billion. Region 9, their neighboring region, is 77.6 billion. And ARM is 33 billion. So let's give them their due share. But everybody else is getting. And I'm not even reading Region 1, 2, and 3. And the NCR, napakalaki na napakaraming pera. So the proper utilization, members of the BTC, is important here. I think also the proper not necessarily earmarking, but prioritization of the funds to be used. Ayaw naman natin lahat 90% PS na lang yan at sweldo na lang yung binibigay natin sa block grant. But moving forward, nandito po yung DBM, Undersecretary Luz Cantor. Let's discuss muna the issues on budgeting and auditing and the spending of the funds for the Bansemer Basic Law before we move on other matters, kasi nandito po yung mga sultanates. Pero siguro unahin ko lang muna itong topic para hindi tayo palipat-lipat from the train of thought. Ma'am Luz, ito sa DBM, historically ito yung complaint ng ating mga kapatid sa ARM na talagang lahat na hiningi nila na pangangailangan ay kailangan dumaan pa sa DBM Manila, and the block grant nga is to address this situation or this problem. I was in the hearing in was it in Marawi, wherein a teacher from the ARM area was saying, kung kailangan po namin ng lamesa po, kailangan namin ng classroom, kailangan namin maglimos sa Manila, sa DepEd Manila, and in turn the DepEd Manila has to also ask it from the DBM. So ma'am, how would you what are your comments? How would you categorize this new system that we are adopting for the Bansemer Basic Law? Although the Secretary already had mentioned that he's in full support of this, but we'd like to hear your comments, ma'am.
Yeah. First of all, good afternoon, everyone, and to the committee. We already submitted our position paper, and the DBM fully supports the bill, subject to some of the provisions which are vague at the moment. First, you mentioned about a meeting with the technical working group and the DOF by next week. Perhaps you could include us, yes, the DBM, in that technical working group.
Absolutely, ma'am.
Yeah, because we wanted to express our view on the matter of a percentage for the block grant. First, sir, ang gusto namin kasi dun sa block grant should be reasonable, sustainable, and affordable. Ibig sabihin, we are not favoring only the Bansamoro area, but also the national government, para naman hindi masyadong ma-dissipate yung funds ng national government for the other regions. So we have to strike a balance between that. And then, in some of the provisions, sir, hindi malinaw sa amin kung may share pa ba ang mga local government units out of those funds that are being earmarked in some of the provisions. So iyon yung gusto namin linawin. Our LGUs, apart from their era, is still entitled to some of the share from the fees and charges that the Bansemer law is getting. So yun lang po. But next week siguro when we flesh out the details, siguro we will expound further on the budget. But sa ngayon po at the outset, when we budget, tama ho si Senator Gatchalian kanina, when we talk about the budget of 34 billion halimbawa for the ARMM, yun ho yung budget ng kanilang opisina. That includes DepEd, pinakamalaki nga ho ang DepEd doon. Marami din silang other offices na may personal services, MOE, and capital outlays. So on top of that, or included in that amount, is a 1 billion share from their internal revenue taxes na kinokolekta within the ARMM. May 1 billion noon na naka-include doon sa 34B. Pag na reach natin ho, na-breach natin yung 1 billion, there are some monies na nasa program fund in the budget, nasa GAA din po yun, na mga halos 800 million. Readily, we could release that kung meron hong collection ang Bureau of Internal Revenue na nag-exceed doon sa 1 billion na initially naka-provide in the budget of ARMM. Yun yung sinasabi ni Sir kanina na pinaghahatian ng regional government at saka yung mga LGUs. So parang pangalawang ira ho ng LGUs yun na kinukuha ng ARMM. So dito ho sa block grant, baka ho yun mawala altogether because the block grant will fully delineate kung saan-saang activities mapupunta yon. Aside from the budget that the ARMM is getting, there will be some developmental activities and projects that they will be funding from the block grant. So yun nga ho ang gusto naming linawin sa mga meetings nating susunod kung magkano in terms of percentage yung kailangang ibigay sa block grant. Perhaps sa akin pong pananaw personally, perhaps a fixed percentage is not what we should aspire at the moment. Kasi evolving ho yan, sabi ni Senator Gatchalian kanina, maski wala kang ginagawa, tataas yan eh. So natural, tataas din lahat yung percentage na yan, tataas din yung amount where the percentage is being computed. So, kung tumaas ho yun, saan ho ba nila talaga gagamitin? Tama ho si Mr. Simon kanina, sabi niya, i-audit naman po yan. So, kung i-audit natin yan, saan ho ba talaga pupunta? Kung performance-based yan na sinasabi ni Secretary Dominguez kanina, anong klaseng performance ang gusto nating makita para lumaki pa yung share ng Bansemer area? Ganun lang po yun. So, we would like to take part in that meeting that you are scheduling next week, sir.
Yes, Ma'am Luz, definitely you will be invited. That part of the technical working group will be with the DBM as well.
Yes.
And meron section 173 dito sa ating Bansemer Basic Law, which is the review of the block grant formula. So there is a mechanism that it shall viewed 10 years after the effectivity of this act and 5 years thereafter. So pwede po mag-change yan because eventually, sunset, sort of a sunset provision. Eventually, we like there 72 billion be internally generated, di ba? Parang yan, that is the federal dream. The dream of all federalists is that we retain our income and then the income will be shared mostly for the local units and then a small portion will go to national government for the salary of the president, our armed forces, and the DFA, Foreign Affairs. But the majority or the bulk will be retained by the local government. So, ang hiningi yata nila, ma'am, is they need a buffer. They need to jumpstart their economy, which is understandable. Dahil nagkakagera dun sa kanila. Once, and to answer Mayor Simeon's concern on the peace agreement na pagbigay po ng mga armas, ito na po yung final chapter on the peace agreement. This is what is lacking, the political solution to the peace agreement, which is the crafting of the Bansemer Basic Law for fiscal autonomy and autonomy in terms of governance. And on board, here's the MNLF and the MILF. I know there are factions, but nevertheless, in the Bansemer Transition Commission, they were represented. And this hopefully will be able to bring them to the table for the final peace agreement and surrender of the firearms, and hopefully the integration of the soldiers of the MILF into the Bangsamoro National Police. By the way, the Bangsamoro National Police, hindi automatic na sila ay magiging member ng police. Hindi po. Let us clarify that. They have to go through the stringent process of qualifying for the membership of the Bangsamoro Police, which will be under the supervision of Chief Bato de la Rosa of the Chief PNP. And then the armed forces will still be under the auspices of the armed forces. So, yan po ang magiging kagandahan nito at I say out of the box and novel approach to what is happening now with the region. So, we have also with us the Bureau of Local Government Finance, BLGF, Executive Director Nino Alvina. Kasama nga din po kayo sa TWG. Importante ito. Lahat po na pinuntahan namin, tinanong kami ng governors at mayors, apektado ba ang aming IRA? Sabi namin, hindi. Hindi, okay na. Wala naman silang problema. And the concept of this USECLUS is that there will be, this is over and above the IRAs of the provincial governments and the municipal governments. So ito po ay parang over and above na dagdag tulong, which ARM is doing now. In fairness to the Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, ARM has projects and programs, and I've seen it in their PowerPoint presentation sa Maguindanao, sa Cotabato City. Meron na silang geomapping, geotagging of projects. Napakarami na silang natayo ng mga eskwelahan and kalsada. So this will just expand what is already being done now in terms of reforms being done by Mujib Governor Hataman. So sa BLGF po, may comment po kayo, Sir Nino?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Senator Win. Thank you for the invitation. Sundan ko lang po yung sinabi ni Secretary Dominguez earlier on performance monitoring. Currently, the local governments in ARMM, the BLGF is closely monitoring their performance in terms of whether they are updating their schedule of market values, their revenue codes, their efficiency in collections. So I think this is something, Mr. Chair, that we can replicate by way of monitoring their performance. On the issue on loans, following the statement also of the Secretary and the concern of Senator Win, we respectfully recommend, Mr. Chair, that it has to be rule-specific on how much can be paid for amortization every year. Taking the current ex-ante rules for local governments, we apply the maximum of 20% for debt servicing every year. So I think in the proposed bill, that has to be spelled out also for the regional government. In other countries, they adopt 25%, some are higher. So for guidance and to ensure good fiscal position of the regional government, we respectfully recommend that it should be spelled out in the bill, Mr. Chair. And we would like to discuss it in the TWG with our counterpart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'd like to also recognize the National Tax Research Center, and then we'll go to Director after. You know, what I noticed po, and Senator Gatchalian is familiar with this, being a former mayor of Valenzuela, tinaas po niya yung income ng Valenzuela para malaki din po yung retained earnings ng city of Valenzuela. And we've seen it now. They've got a fantastic university and all the developments in Valenzuela. I noticed sa ARM, with all due respect to my brothers and sisters in the ARM, I like to call a spade a spade. Lahat naman tayo sa Northern Mindanao and even Luzon, nagkakaroon ng problema ng corruption, di ba? It's not unique to ARM. It's unique to the whole Philippines. Mayors in Luzon and Visayas are all embroiled in corruption scandals utilizing their IRA. Yun nga lang sa ARM lang na medyo na-highlight palagi. But I noticed the difference is that the mayors of ARM, unfortunately, they do not go out of their way to attract investments. Again, it's a chicken and the egg scenario. They say dahil may armado dito, hindi natin matanggal yung armadong mga tao dito, kaya hindi makapasok yung investors. Unlike, for example, in Bukidnon, in my hometown in Maramag, the mayor talaga is active in asking investments to come in. May bagong sugar mill, may itong mga bagong power plant. So, there will be more income into the system, derived locally. Maybe there's a provision, a challenge to the Bangsamoro Transition Commission let's look at the provision that we can include there, challenging the local government units to increase their internal revenue collection. Because ang nangyayari nga po, katulad ng binanggit ni Secretary Sani kanina, and what we've already seen, is many mayors just wait for the era to come. They don't anymore fix their problem of public order and security. They don't care kung sino nanggugulo dyan. Anyway, every day, may era naman papasok. So, maybe that's one of the reforms that we can put dito sa Bangsamoro Basic Law para yung yayaman talaga yung Bangsamoro Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. And I'd like the National Tax Research Center to comment on that. Do you see would you be able to help us strengthen that particular provisions on taxation so that we can encourage more tax collection, particularly on local revenues?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, we can help on that aspect. But this afternoon, we would like to point out, the NTRC would like to point out some concerns on the formula of the block grant. Because as presently worded, the basis of the annual block grant appears to be the net national internal revenue collection of the BIR and the net of the national internal revenue collection of the BOC. There is a need to clarify because yesterday, in our meeting with some OPAP officials, we were informed that the intention really is for the total collection of the BOC, not the net internal revenue collection of the BOC. So
it must be clarified. Yes, I agree. I agree, ma'am.
Because
we take note of that.
If it's, it would be, there's a lot of difference if it's the net, because if it's the net, we just take out the customs duty and just consider the excise and VAT of the customs BOC. But if it's the total collection, then we have to take into account the customs duty and excise and VAT.
We thank you for that and we take note of that. Any other observations, ma'am?
Perhaps we can just raise it during the TWG. Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Kay Director Rivera, okay naman po yung sinabi ni Yusek Cantor. Thank you. Sir, any more else on the wealth sharing before I talk to, we recognize the other resource persons? Siguro, on wealth sharing, si Secretary, the Secretary of the DNR of ARM, because there are questions on the sharing of wealth also in the natural resources. Do you have any comment on the particular provisions of the BBL on wealth sharing when it comes to the natural resources of the region? Right now, ano po yung status ko? Sa mining, sa forestry, sa use of land, ano po yung fisheries? Ano po yung status ko?
Honorable Chairman, Senator Juan Miguel Chibiri, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, let me say something about BBL. At the outset, please allow this representation and being a Mindanao to express my gratitude and support to the enactment of Bangsamoro Basic Law as meant to achieve lasting peace in Mindanao. The enactment of this law will usher the region to attain and peace and development that will benefit the majority of the present armed and achieve inclusive growth on the prosperity for all. As a Bangsamoro and an advocate of the environment, I do hope that BBL will not only bring ecological integrity, but more so the resilience in our community and the people as well. We continue to fight for the effect of climate change. rest assured that we will continue to support the endeavor. Now, kanina nag-usap kami ni Commissioner Jury dahil meron akong konting medyo alanganin ako doon sa sharing, pero malinaw naman yung sharing. Now, kami po dito sa autonomous region, parang lahat ng activity, lahat ng effort ginawa namin to improve ARM. Pero nung nagbasa namin itong proposed BBL, the Bansemer Basic Law, parang in general, mas maganda sa autonomous region. Now, in terms of collection namin sa revenue collection, sa autonomous region, meron ko kaming EO number 1, which is total logging ban sa autonomous region. So wala na po kami sa revenue collection in terms of forestry matters. Ang natitira lang po sa amin itong mining activity sa autonomous region. Now, dito sa mining activity, sa ARM, ay meron kaming 3 mining operation sa Tawi-Tawi. Sa mining operation sa Tawi-Tawi, we have nangungulekta po kami in terms of yung 5% regional wealth tax. Regional wealth tax. So yun yung kinokolekta namin. And direct deposit and direct remittance to the Office of the Regional Treasury. So yun po yung income na na-generate namin sa autonomous region in terms of mining.
Magkano po yan, sir? Para at least pag may nagtanong sa amin. Sa
Since 2012, nagsimula na yung mining sa Tawi-Tawi. Sa 2012, medyo maliit pa, nakakolekta kami ng 5.2 million pesos. On 2013, we have 16 point something, 16.1. Sa 2014, we have 210 million. 2015, we have 224 million. 2016 is 44 kasi bumaba yung price ng nickel. And at 2017, we have 124 million with a total of 624,638.776 ang collection ng DENR sa regional wealth tax.
Question lang, Secretary. Ang concern talaga ng ating mga kasamahan, lalo na si Senator Lauren Legarda, is on the protection of forest areas and protection of the natural resources of the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Ang tanong niya, yung national laws ba na pinasa niya, marami siyang naipasa na environment laws. You know, she's one of our advocates, the top advocate for environment in the Senate. The passage of the national laws on protection, let's say national integrated protected area systems, will this also be in effect? And I'd like to ask that question to the Bangsamoro Transition Commission, to the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. Let's say laws on clean water, laws on clean air, laws on yung municipal, yung waste ang tawag dyan, yung Solid Waste Management Act. Kalimutan ko na rin, author din ako dun. Solid Waste Management Act and on forestry conservation and climate change. Will this be applicable? Is this now applicable to ARM?
Yes po, Mr. Chair.
So applicable to ARM to?
At this point in time, Mr. Chairman, nag-increase po yung forest cover sa autonomous region with the total of 6.8%. That is equivalent to 20,000 hectares. Simula nandiyan kami because yung proper implementation of total logging ban sa autonomous region. So nag-increase po kami ng 6.8%. Now, gumawa po kami ng roadmap namin sa autonomous region, ang tinatawag namin Palaw 2022, which covers yung sinasabi mo na climate change mitigation, planting activities, and then solid waste management program. So nandyan muna sa roadmap ng autonomous region. Pero yung roadmap namin, nasimula na namin and ready to turn over to the Bansemer.
Thank you very much, Secretary. Maybe that roadmap, could you submit it to the committee as well for our personnel, and we can study this further?
Yes, yes, bro.
Thank you. We have with us the Port Administrator of Polyok, Freeport, and Ecozone, si Mr. Eshan Mabang. I know you have a presentation, wag na siguro natin ilabas.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I would like to ask your comments on how this measure, Bansemer Basic Law, will affect you. Will it hurt you? Will it help you? Your comments, sir.
It will really help in terms of support operation lang, sir, in Ecozone. Actually, sir, I will give you a figure para ma-improve yung collection sa Bureau of Customs, no? Siguro masyadong mababa yung 6%. If you notice, when Governor Hataman was elected in 2013, the collection of the Bureau of Customs at Pulyok Port is 75,000 pesos only. In 2014 is 19 million, 2015 91, 2016 134 million. Kaya ang masaklap lang dito, Mr. Chair, wala kasing share sa ngayon ang ARMM sa collection ng Bureau of Customs to all ports collected, no? Especially dito sa Pulyok Port. From 2013 to 2017, the total collection of the Bureau of Customs at Pulyok Port is 286,448,000. Pero despite of that collection, wala tayong share. Kung i-total mo yung collection sa lahat ng ports sa ARMM, from Port of Basilan, Port of Jolo, and Port of Tawi-Tawi, syempre baka mas malaki pa dyan. Kung tingnan mo lang yung 6%, masyadong maliit, no? Pangalawa po, isang comment ko rin po dun sa, para ma-improve dun sa provision on the Bansemer Basic Law, specifically dun sa ports, no? If you notice, Mr. Chair, when the ports was devolved sa ARMM, wala pong plantilla until now. Dati po, under po yan sa Philippine Ports Authority. Nung nababa po yan sa ARMM in 1990, I think 96 or 92, walang plantilla yan until now. Kaya, para ma-improve siguro, kasi merong provision dyan na disposition of first central government office within the Bansemer region. Kasi ang nangyari dyan, Mr. Chair, nung ma-devolve siya, yung mga personnel doon sa Port of Sulu, Port of Tawi-Tawi, Port of Basilan, and Port of Pulyok na bumalik sa Davao, Jensan, Zamboanga City. Walang naiwan doon. Kaya when we requested sa Port of Pulyok yung proposed plantilla, I think 2 years ago sa DBM, because of the AOM ng aming auditor, then until now hindi pa po lumalabas, no? Kaya siguro yun ang isa nating tingnan, yung mga national government agencies na within the Bansemer, example, Port of Cotabato, paano kung pumasok ang Port of Cotabato, saan mapunta yung tao? Baka aalis, magaya naman yung dati. Siguro isa yun sa titingnan natin na hindi maulit, no? Dalawa lang po yung comment ko po doon, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, could you just give us the may written presentation or your presentation? Please submit to the committee as well as your comments today. Could you please have that written down, as it will be notes? It will be taken up during the technical work. Yes,
Mr. Chair, just
Senator
clarificatory. Yung kanina po na banggit nyo, sir, yung collection, lahat yan accrue to national.
Yes, direct po ang collection ng BOC sa national.
So wala pong
walang share, walang naiwan po.
But yung mga tao doon is under ARMM?
Under ARMM po. Pero walang plantilla yan, sir. Lahat ng ports are.
So yung sweldo nyo galing ARMM?
Locally funded kami, sir.
So locally funded lahat ng sweldo?
Yes, sir.
Pero yung collection?
National.
Bakit ganun?
Ayun ang nasa batas eh. Sa collection ng customs, direct sa national.
So the expense is with ARMM, but the revenue is with the national?
Yes, pag importation, sir. Pag collection ng Bureau of Customs.
Ah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Pero pag local
wharfage usage sa amin po.
Sa inyo na yun.
Yes,
100% accrued to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pero yung lahat na nagtatao doon, Is lahat ARMM, walang national?
Walang national dun, sir. Kaya nga po, nung ma-devolve, bumalik sa Region 11, Region 12, and Region 9. Walang naiwan po sa ports po natin.
Do you have any idea kung magkano po ang, in your own port lang, no? Magkano po ang revenues that is derived from international transactions?
Okay, sa port lang namin po, from 2013 to 2017, is a total of 286,448,289 pesos.
286 million pesos?
Yes, sir.
Lahat to is from national?
National BOC collection. Sa isang port lang yan, sa Port of Pulyok.
Port of Pulyok.
Ang investment ng national government sa Port of Pulyok is 210 million. Ibig sabihin may surplus. Kumita ang national government.
So, ibig mo sabihin, ano ito, what is this 286? VAT to?
Yan yung duties and taxes.
Duties and taxes,
excise
VAT,
tax.
lahat-lahat
Yes,
nito,
sir.
excise tax, etc.
Yes, sir.
So, lahat ito, kinokolekta sa mga imported items.
Yes, sir.
And then, rinirimit sa national government.
Yes, through the Bureau of Customs Davao kasi ang Port of Pulyok is under sa Bureau of Customs Davao.
But yung mga tao doon, the customs personnel, lahat is under arm.
No, sir. Under sa Custom Davao. Hindi kasi devolve ang custom sa ARMM.
Hindi, sa inyo.
Sa Davao, sir. Custom Davao.
Custom Davao.
Ganun din sa island, Custom Zamboanga.
Custom Zamboanga.
Yes, sir.
So, so may dalawang klaseng tao doon. Isang ARMM, isang national.
Yes, pag sa customs po.
Pag sa customs, okay. But the port operation, lahat sa inyo.
Sa amin po, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'd like to also recognize Ms. Brigida Fontanilla, Chief Cash Division of ARM. Ma'am, I think you have a presentation. Could you submit to us the presentation? Yun ba yung breakdown of the ARM expenses? Ano po i-present niyo po sana sa amin, ma'am?
Mr. Chair, it was already discussed by Attorney Mangotaran.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So, yes, Secretary?
I would like to add more information about the area of the autonomous region. Subject po sa, natapos na po namin yung cadastral survey sa autonomous region. Ang subject nung area ng autonomous region na cadastral is 2.889 hectares. Ang resulta ng cadastral is 1.454 million hectares only. So, ang Maguindanao is 568,000 hectares. Lanao Sur is 458,000 hectares. Basilan is 123. Sulu is 184. And Tawi-Tawi is 120,000 hectares. Pero dati ang land area ng subject sa cadastral, ang Maguindanao is 924,919. Lanao Sur is 1.259 million hectares. Basilan is 114. Sulu is 348. And Tawi-Tawi is 314 with a total of 2.8 million hectares. Ang resulta ng cadastral namin is 1.454 million hectares po.
Yan, Secretary, tatanong ko sa inyo na yan. Saan pumunta yung lupa na yan? Hindi naman pwedeng lumipad yung lupa na yan. Dati ba kasamang bukid nun dyan? Kaya sa Lanao Sur?
Yan ang in-inform ko lang dahil para maano sa BBL.
Maayos na ng Bansemer po.
Ito na yung total land area. Na meron na kaming resulta nung cadastral survey sa
But the DBM computes the ERA through land and population, di ba? So what is being computed now? Well, mahabang usapin to. Kasi alam ko mismo yung DNR ay nagkakaiba sa local government unit in cadastral survey. Yes. But is it that the DNR is the Land Management Bureau is the source and authority for the areas for provinces and municipalities in terms of land size?
Yes. Yes po, Mr. Chair.
So iba yung DNR national, iba ba yung figures sa DNR?
The same.
Same?
The same.
Ba? Anyway, mahabang usapin pa yan.
Ito yung 2.8 sa autonomous region lang ito.
Alam mo naman kasi minsan pinapalaki nila para mas malaki yung ERA.
Yeah.
Diba? Until now, there's border disputes between Bukidnon, North Cotabato, and many other areas. So it's understandable because of the computation of the era. But anyway, thank you for that information. Sana maayos na natin yan with the Bangsamoro region, autonomous region. So now I'd like to go on other matters. And we had with us yesterday, and I would just, seniority muna siguro as in terms of age and royalty. Kasi itong mga royal sultanates, sultans of the Sultanate of Lanao, they visited me yesterday. They were concerned, their concern was in the Bangsamoro Basic Law. There's no longer mention on the rights of the sultanates of the Bangsamoro area. We'd like to hear Dr. Lomondot on yung mga hinanaing ng ating mga kapatid sa sultanates of the Bangsamoro area. Doctor, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you very much. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I would like to inform this august body that yours truly is the present Secretary General of the Federation of the Royal Sultanate of Lanao. We have at the back is the top officials of the Federation of the Royal Sultanate of Lanao. We have the old mans there, Sultan Munsi Makabando, the President Emeritus of the Lanao Sultanate. We have the President of the Federation. We have Mahmoud Dalidik. We also have the Chairman of the 20th Legislative Assemblies, Jamal Mama, and the last one is the member of the Board of Directors, Al-Karib Udal Abidin. Peace be upon us all. First of all, allow me express our thanks to Senator Mig Soberi, Chairman of the BBL Senate Committee hearing, of inviting the Federation of the Royal Sultanate of Lanao to present their views, reaction, and proposal to the Bangsamoro Basic Law, which the Senate is going to wrap up for its finality. Mr. Chairman, there are only few important things that we intend to appeal from this august body. And the first one is to recommend for the immediate passage and approval of the Bangsamoro Basic Law, where more than 200,000 people died fighting for freedom and self-rule since the early 60s up to now. Today, each and every one of us had seen and witnessed the Marawi Siege, where almost thousands of people died. Almost 80% of our houses were destroyed by bombs and burned to ashes. Around 7 to 8 billion of properties were lost and destroyed. So this is the very reason why the Federation of the Royal Sultanate of Lanao is appealing for the early approval of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Because the Bangsamoro Basic Law is not alone for the interest of the Muslims in Mindanao, but for the Lomards and to our brother Christians as well. Because we want to live in one Mindanao, one heart, so that everybody will be equal in the eyes of God, and at least our closer relationship will be seen in the future if the Bangsamoro Basic Law will be approved. Now, one important thing that we are going to emphasize here, because in the recent coming out of the BTC version, the Pimentel version as well as Miguel Soberi, there was no indication of including the Sultanate rights in the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Now remember that the Sultanate, long before the coming of the Spaniard, has their own political system. They're the one who fight the Spaniard for their freedom. And this is the very reason why we appeal to the Senate Committee for the Inclusion and Retention of the Marcos Bansemer Basic Law under the Bill of Rights, Section 70, of including the Sultanate rights. And allow me, Mr. Chairman, to read the portion of the Bansemer Basic Law which was proposed by Senator Marcos, so that everybody will understand that there was already an inclusion of the Sultanate right in the Senate version made by Senator Marcos. Section 70, Sultanate rights. The Bansemer regional government recognizes the right of the Sultan, especially on areas where sultans are accredited and recognized by their taritive ijma and customary and adat laws. It shall adopt measures for the promotion and protection of the Sultanate right, including the right for the traditional native titles of sultanship, the right to political participation in the Bansemer regional government, including the reserved seats in the parliament. This is what we are asking for the Senate. In your version, which was being made, you included in the Bill of Rights the indigenous right, the right of the youth, the right of the woman. Now comes the Sultanate right, which was deleted now in the bill that the Senate is preparing. So that is what we are appealing now. Now remember that as far as the Sultanate right is concerned, it is different with the word traditional leaders. Because traditional leaders does not clearly mean that they are sultans. No. We have our own taritive and ijma, because our interest is not the interest alone of the Sultanate of Lanao, but the Sultanate of Kabuntalan, Sultanate of Sulu, and the Sultanate of Kabungsuan, as well as the Sultanate, that Kabuntalan is includes the Raja Buayan, the Sultanate of Maguindanao. This is not alone for the Lanao Sultanate. So we are appealing that this time na sana makita ninyo itong the right of the Sultanate. Now remember that in the first place, if we go back to history, the Sultanate are the very people who fight for their freedom, freedom of the Mindanaoans. If I quote the word of Onofre de Corpus, Sabinia, had it not been of the coming of the foreign conquistadores, the Muslims, as well as the religious activities, will I think the major one. Even in history, and I quote, that long before the coming of the Spaniard, there is that political system which was already in Luzon and in Visayas, and that is the Sultanate system or political system that we have. So why forget it? The role of the Sultanate in the Bansemer Basic Law. This is unfair to the Sultanate. Remember that the Sultanate are there. We are now functioning, leading our people, solving riddles or feuds and other disputes, and it is the Sultan. There are times that the mayor and some other people cannot solve this problem, but it is the Sultanate that can easily solve the problems by using their own taritive and ijma, of which it's defined the closeness of people, and that is the basic reason why that riddles in our place were easily solved. So that is the very reason why we appeal now to the BTC. You are here to Brother Mix Sobiri. You are our hope. We have sent, as you have said, during your visit in the Mindanao State University, this is the last BBL as you have seen. In fact, Villar also had stated that this BBL will be a Valentine's for the Muslims. And I hope this will come true.
Thank you, Sultan.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sultan.
I hope that this will be taken out.
Yes.
And other proposals, Mr. Chairman, were already submitted to your staff, of which we define other proposals. And I think that as far as the Sultanate is concerned, yun lang ang main concern namin, the early approval of the Bansemer Basic Law and the inclusion or retaining the Marcos version as far as Bill of Rights is concerned. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And wassalam.
Thank you, Sultan. And we'll take that into strong consideration when we meet next week with the Bansemer Transition Commission. Napaka-safe naman yung section. Pwede natin pag-usapan, and maybe we can also insert this provision. I agree that they should be recognized. Are you a Sultan, Commissioner Lorena? No naman. Sa bahay nyo lang.
No, but many of the Sultan of Sulu are my relatives, including the current Sultan.
Yeah, we have actually members of the BTC, Sultan Abbas, Datu Mussolini. Ito yung mabait na Mussolini, hindi yung sa World War II. Pero, yes, we'll take it in strong consideration, Sultan. I commit to it. We will have the discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. And we'd like to again recognize, we'd like to also recognize Adolfo Paglinawan. He was a nandito yung credentials. Ay, ito. Para maganda introduction po natin. Former spokesman of the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. and former Deputy Secretary General for the 1987 peace talks with the MNLF and CPLA under Ambassador Emmanuel Pelaez. Sir, you're now recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wish to thank you for allowing me to speak before this committee. This is my first attempt at participation at legislation. After having been stationed at the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. for 7 years, a good 9 months of which was served in country to renegotiate the Jeddah Accord with the Moro National Liberation Front under the GRP panel led by Ambassador Emmanuel Pelaez, I just felt there have been some crucial details that have been left out. I will cut my presentation to saying we're discussing here a seeming culmination of the steps out of the negotiations with one of the belligerent forces in our country today in search of that proverbial, real, and enduring peace. As you said in your explanatory note, the economic cost of war in Mindanao reaching as high as 640 billion pesos from Marcos to Aquino III is already proof positive that the solution cannot be delivered by mere ascription, as the bill portends. I would have been more challenged if the historical roots, part of which have already been expressed by Dr. Lumondot. Legal facts and moral ascendancy were given more weight than mere ascription, which is nothing but, in my personal view, political accommodation through selective legislation. We only heard of Bansemer when on May 1 of 1968, a spontaneous backlash of the 2-month-old so-called Jabida massacre. The Mindanao Independence Movement was founded when Datu Udtud Matalam, a former governor of Cotabato, called for a declaration of Mindanao independence movement leading to the formation of an independent Muslim state out of the Philippines. But a point there is being missed. It was, however, Rashid Lukman, also of MIM, who provided a critical link to the external sponsors such as Malaysia, where Tun Mustafa, then Chief Minister of Sabah, and then Prime Minister Tun Abdul Razak were angered by the Operation Merdeka sponsored the training of 9 young Muslim nationalists headed by Professor Nur Miswari in Pulau Bangkor in 1969, and another 300 cadres trained in Bangi Island in Sabah. It now appears that maybe to the dismay of some, is being called a hoax, but you will have to hear the testimonies of Ambassadors Rigoberto Tiglao and Teddy Boy Locsin, even quoting the statements of the late Benigno Aquino Jr. for that. With the decline of Dato Matalam, Nur Miswari organized a splinter group from MIM and publicly announced the formation of the Moro National Liberation Front, one of the reasons why President Ferdinand Marcos declared martial law. When in 1976, Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi brokered the signing of the MNLF-GRP Tripoli Agreement of 1976, wherein the MNLF accepted the Marcos government's offer of semi-autonomy of the regions in dispute, Hashim Salamat broke away from Miswari with 57 MNLF officers a year after. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front thus came to become what would serve as a new proxy army of a foreign country in southern Philippines. I often ask myself the existence of the low-intensity conflict or insurgency in southern Philippines, and I feel that this is a very important factor. Because whatever we are talking about here, if there will be no peace, all the development go down the drain. The mention of the good doctor refreshes my mind because it brings about a very important note in history. And this is basically, if I may fast forward, discussing matters of generational injustice inflicted upon Mindanao. But if there is any party involved with the Muslims that has suffered most, I would say that this has been inflicted about the sultanates, specifically the Sultanate of Sulu and its Lupa Sug, comprising of Tausug, Iyakan, Sama Tawa-Tawi, Sama Bangingi, Chama Mapun, Sama Laot, Kalibugan, Chabacano, and others. Under the Americans alone, major military engagements occurred in Bud Sinumaan, Bud Talipao, Bud Bagsak, and Bud Patian. But on March 7, 1906, under General Wood, 1,500 Tausug men, women, and children, and all folks at Budaho were massacred. The picture of this is being shown even by our own President Duterte to the foreign press. Many more battles followed, and a truce was eventually declared only to be broken by yet another massacre of 350 at Bud Bagsak under General John Pershing.
Mr. Paglinawan, we need to ask you to go straight to the point, sir. I have to close the meeting.
Okay.
And we'd like to go straight to the point. Please submit the historical facts that you have there, sir.
I will submit to you basically the summary of the observations that I have. I've already informed your staff, sir. But I would like just to end this. What is further being obscured in all this is that the Sultanate, and it must be brought to the consciousness of this country that has pre-existed the Philippine Republic, is still a de facto state. There might be some problem in international law superimposing the BBL over the Sultanate of Sulu, for instance. In Lupa Sug, its ancestral domain, by record in history, law, and morals.
This could be another poison that would perpetuate the numbing effect of President Manuel Luis Quezon's issuance of a memorandum circular canceling further succession to the Sultanate in 1936. Two more paragraphs, Your Honor. No less than Francis Burton Harrison minimized the Quezon fiat, saying that the Sultanate can only be abolished if the Sultan abdicates or if the Ruma Bichara fails to elect his replacement. But that destroyed the Sultanate's modus vivendi with the Americans after the Kiram-Carpenter Treaty, which the Commonwealth should have implemented. That despite the pain of the massacres, the first secessionist movement was indeed established. When the Sultan of Sulu, accompanied by other sultans, went to Washington, D.C., preferring to be given independence by the United States or being designated a protectorate instead of joining the Philippine Commonwealth ipso facto, the Republic of the Philippines. Mr. Chairman, the Sultanate of Sulu entered into a treaty of independent tributary states with China in 1405. I do not need to express the implications of this, but if they are not included in whatever this law is named after, I feel there will be dire consequences about another secessionist movement in the offing. So after closing the Tripoli Agreement, we gave birth to the MILF. And now we're closing the MILF chapter with the BBL. What would come next, Mr. Chairman? But the details of which I'd rather give you in writing because it has national security implications, which should guide you accordingly in dealing with the details, especially the aspect of what I find to be some verbal engineering obscuring the role of the Sultanate of Sulu, especially when it comes to its claim to Sabah. Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paglinawan. We appreciate your perspective on the matter, and we'd like to ask you to submit to the committee so we can take this in consideration during the technical working group as well during the discussion. So, with that all said, I guess Senator Gatchalian.
Just as a final point, and since Mayor Simon is also here, and I can see Mayor Mr. Borja is also here, who's expert in the power industry. I took the liberty, Mr. Chair, to scrutinize the provisions on the power sector here in the BBL. And the power sector is quite a complicated sector. However, in the BBL, there's only one provision that deals with it. No? So I took the liberty of analyzing the provision in relation to the entire power sector of the country, Mr. Chair. And there are several important points that I want to discuss. However, because of lack of time, I would just like to throw this to the table, and I would like to, for the PTC to think about this, to ponder upon this. So later on during the technical working group, we can still further refine and clarify the provisions on the power sector, Mr. Chair. On the aspect of regulation, Mr. Chair, in the BBL, there's a general provision on regulation, no? Regulating distribution, regulating transmission, regulating power generation. As we all know, there's only one transmission company. We cannot slice up the transmission company into several different components because it's a natural monopoly, and it's designed to operate from Luzon all the way to Visayas and later on to Mindanao. So having a separate regulatory body for the Bangsamoro, meaning we will create a Bangsamoro ERC, no, for this matter. It might be impossible, no, for the Bangsamoro ERC to regulate the transmission lines because it's a natural monopoly. So that's one, Mr. Chair. Number two, setting up a Bangsamoro ERC might lead to complications because we have in In our setup, there's only one regulatory agency that regulates the entire nation. I'll give you a very specific example. When the wholesale market in Mindanao will be integrated to Luzon and Visayas, sino magre-regulate ng wholesale market? Is it the Bansemer ERC or is it the national ERC? Because these two are definitely different regulators. When it comes naman to power gen and to distributors inside the Bangsamoro, selling outside of the Bangsamoro entity, who has jurisdiction? Is it the national bank? Is it the national ERC or the Bangsamoro ERC? And vice versa. No? Kung merong power generator in Sarangani selling to the Bangsamoro area, who has jurisdiction? And we all know kung merong conflict ang distributor and ang Genco, it's really the regulator that puts them together and dispense with this conflict. So ngayon, mayroong magkakaroon tayo ng jurisdictional issues. That's on the regulatory setup. Number two, Mr. Chair, is I saw in the provision the preferential rights to be given to the Bangsamoro government over Agus Pulangi hydropower plant. Right now, there are 7 power plants in the whole system, in which 2 of the hydropower plants are inside the Bangsamoro. The 5 is outside. So kung bibigyan natin ng Bangsamoro government preferential rights, kasama pa ho ba yung nasa labas? But we all know this is one system. We cannot chop the Agus Pulangi power system into several components because it's one system that operates the entire power plant. No? That's another one. And then, Mr. Chair, I just want to flag the BTC because the intention here is to have administrative jurisdiction over the electric co-ops. No? But I looked at the performance of the electric co-ops. Out of the I think the 8 electric co-ops inside Bangsamoro, halos lahat po ay classification niya letter D. Ibig sabihin yung performance hindi maayos, no? Mataas po yung system loss, collection efficiency is very low. And to top it off, yung Lanao del Sur Electric Cooperative and Maguindanao Electric Cooperative already owes PSAM 10 billion pesos. So in effect, if the Bangsamoro government, or in this case, the Bangsamoro NEA will take over the electric co-op, we will also inherit 10 billion in terms of liabilities because it's NEA that is giving them subsidy to pay off all of these debts, including accruals to system loss and accruals to paying off some of the liabilities of these electric co-ops. So I just want to flag the BTC that to date, September 2007, so as of September 2017, they already extended 1.9 billion pesos in terms of subsidies. So itong 1.9 definitely sometime in the future, babayaran rin po ng electric cooperatives. So my point here is, once you take over the administrative component of this, or administrative responsibilities of these electric cooperatives, kasama na rin ho dyan yung liabilities. No? Kasi ngayon, NEA is paying or at least giving some form of subsidies para gumalaw po yung liabilities. So these are just a few of the points, Mr. Chair, but later on during the technical working group, we'll participate and give some suggestions, no? Subject to the discussion with the BTC, Mr. Chair.
Yes, actually, we're inviting the members of the senator's staff that were with us the last 3 weeks to join us in the technical working group. So, kanya-kanyang forte dito. Si Senator Gatchalian is an expert on energy affairs, being the chairman of the Committee on Energy. We appreciate those inputs, Your Honor. Maybe you can help us clarify this in the provisions. Because even Pulangi, galing sa Bukidnon yung Pulangi. Headwaters is from Cabanglasan. Yeah, we just contribute to the Rio Grande. Of course, what you do with the Rio Grande is what you want to do with it. Pero hindi nila maklaim yung Pulangi for kasi nasa amin, sa Maramag yung planta. Yeah, I mean, the power plant and the river. But maybe to clarify on a later time during the TWG. But final words, Commissioner Lorena, and just a short word.
Yes.
I really have a meeting at 1 p.m. They're upstairs, and I really have to. And it's good that we adjourn already, diba? Unless you want another hearing, we just call for another hearing. Commissioner Joe.
We appreciate the inputs given by our chair of the Committee on Energy, more particular on regulation, and of course identifying the concern with respect to systems loss of our cooperatives. In fact, the basic concern of ARM was because of this, the red of the cooperatives. You know, energy is needed to boost their development in the region. And if we continue to have cooperatives which are not performing well, then it might affect the development of the entire region. In fact, I would just like also to plug that with respect to the liabilities, because now we are already subsidizing some of these cooperatives, there was this also a provision which says that without prejudice to the payment of obligation of the PUCOR and PISAM to the Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. By our reckoning, when I was still Solicitor General of the ARM, there's supposed to be a payment already by NAPUCOR, but it was overtaken with a transfer to PISAM. And it's run to about 10B already by my accounting now. It could have been used to defray the expenditure of our cooperatives to clear their up. But more importantly, the idea of bringing in the regulation of our cooperatives to make it more effective. And I think our good chairman of the Committee of Energy could help us out in order that we can make our cooperatives effective. As I already mentioned, it would be best if our local electric cooperatives are functioning well, because that is an ingredient for our development in the South. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Joe. Commissioner Latif.
Thank you very much for this wonderful Valentine gift to the Bangsamoro people, Your Honors. We'd like to thank all the senators for supporting our bill, the BTC version. And also, of course, including all the inputs of the resource persons here. May we just add that the Bangsamoro Basic Law is following actually a peace process infrastructure. So much so that everything hinges on so many things. Like there's a political component, which is what we are undertaking right now, the legislative track. And also alongside with this is the normalization track, which is very important to normalize in order to bridge from a former combatant into the normal mainstream of society. So much so that if the commissioning is going to be undertaken, there should be a passage of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. Because many has been said about the failure of the peace process before. And now we are undertaking a very important roadmap, which we can actually use as a basis whether or not the government or the MILF or are sincere in their efforts to really resolve this issue. So we are following this roadmap. And let me remind this august body that we are actually in the stage of passage of the Bangsamoro Basic Law. And should there be a passage in the plebiscite, 30% of MILF forces will be decommissioned. And for Phase 3, upon the establishment of Bangsamoro Transition Authority, 65% would also be. After that will be 65%. And upon the election of Bangsamoro officials, 100% will be decommissioned. And alongside will be the several layers like security, socio-economic programs, confidence building measure, and finally the transitional justice and reconciliation, which is actually dealing with the past. So we are following a very good roadmap compared to the other peace process tracks, if I may. This is a very good formula for resolving also peace. So thank you very much again, sirs, for having all of this effort for us.
You know, we're very honored, Senator Gatchalian, myself, all the senators that participated are very honored to be part of this history, historical, I'd say, time in our Philippines where we will be able to have achieve long-lasting peace for our region. This is one step, and we're doing our work. Kasi the other steps, the appointment of the Bangsamoro Transition Authority, kay Presidente na yan, under our bill. But this is the most important step to be able to get to that direction, of which most of our members of the MILF and the ARPO components will be decommissioned. So I am very excited. It's beyond words. On my part, very emotional. My staff, the other time when we discussed this, we got very emotional, all of us. Because sabi namin, we have the opportunity to create the path for peace in Mindanao. And I'm very hopeful because right now with the face saving, or goodwill gestures rather, not face saving, correct that, confidence building measures that's being done by the MILF in terms of running after the BIFF and other armed components. I think with the passage of the BBL, it will be, how do you say, shunned by the very Bansamoro people themselves. If you join an extremist organization, the people themselves will be revolting against you. If you're an extremist, ayaw na nila yun, because they will see the opportunities laid out for them in this law. So it is my pleasure and honor to order the committee secretary and to ask our fellow Bangsamoro Transition Commission, together with our resource persons and the Office of the Senators, to comprise a technical working group to start the hearings next week. We will later on let you know where the hearings will be, and to start the crafting of the committee report. And so the subcommittee hearing on the Bangsamoro Basic Law is hereby adjourned. Happy Valentine's to my brothers in the Bangsamoro region.
Bye, commissioners. See you next week. Pauna na ako sa inyo. Bye-bye. Trabaho talaga. Yan, next week talaga trabaho. Thank you, guys. Thank you, boss. Thank you, boss. Alam mo, historical background. Sabuhay po ako ng libro. Matindi pa. Pwede din sa po tayo. Alright, thanks guys.
Si Win.